of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So welcome, everyone. This is the 275th year that Newton has existed. The counting of town meetings early in history is very difficult to figure out, and it's not clear that they always had one when we would think they would have. So from what I was able to try to guess from way back when, many years ago when I looked into it, this might be our 269th town meeting, and it might be our 270th, not counting the special meetings. And I always just like to take a moment, I think some of the people in this room have already heard this story, but we're part of a very long tradition. It goes back before the founding of our country, and it's an important tradition, and there's a great story historically from the early phase of our town where there was a big dispute with Southampton over the same things people get upset about and talk about today, and that was who paid what bill, what the taxes were, what the fundings was, what was going to happen in what project, and so forth. And there was such a contentious meeting among the residents of the town of Newton that ultimately someone petitioned the British colonial governor to overturn the results of the town meeting. And they alleged every single complaint people have ever had, that there weren't enough people there to really represent the town. There were too many people who shouldn't be there. People spoke out of turn. People who voted who shouldn't have voted because they weren't actually supposed to vote, and so forth. So we're going to avoid all those problems, and we're certainly not going to be appealing to the British colonial governor, but we are part of a long tradition here, and I would hope to see, perhaps in the future, or perhaps if we have some people watching us either in the future or online today, that people would join in, because it's an extremely important part of how we run our government here in New Hampshire, and other states in New England do a similar thing, but it's a unique opportunity for people in the community to actually participate. So I want to thank everyone who came out today. Let's start off with some introductions. The selectmen, of course. To my right, Bob Marchand, the chairman, Matt Burrell, Mike Connolly. Over on the left side, Dan Guy, Joseph Simone. Jim O'Mara's here. I'm looking at his table and not seeing him. He's the interim town administrator. Robin Sparks, who is executive assistant, kind of focused on the selectmen and the Board of Selectmen's activities. Chris Hilson is joining us today, town council. In case we get some kind of legal inquiry, we need his input. To my left, our town clerk, Mary Jo McCullough, her assistant, Tony Suslowitz, and the supervisors of the checklist, Colette Ferrandi, Marcella Vincent, and Joe Aiello. So thanks to everyone who's here in their official roles. Thanks also to, I see many people who are involved who are our members, operating heads of departments, members of the town, and so forth. So let's talk just for a second. I think everybody in this room could probably say this, and I should also thank the members of the cable committee who are participating, broadcasting, and helping us to produce this. Let me just say a few things to get us started. Everybody in this room can probably repeat these and has heard them many times, but our role here is to consider each of the warrant articles on the warrant, to discuss it, potentially, if you as voters see fit, to amend it, and then it will be put on the ballot so it gets its final vote on election day. I may use a little bit of informality when it comes to the discussion to move things quicker. I do want to point out that our purpose here, it's not a question and answer session really to interrogate members of the town government, even though that might be tempting and fun, but to understand a particular warrant article, see if we need to amend it, and then move it forward to put it on the ballot. If you are speaking to an issue, it is very helpful and important that you use the microphone so the people who are not here can capture it. And also, please state your name, because that's helpful to people who are watching this. And I'll say it's also helpful because we may have to make fairly detailed minutes in the future at some point, and it's important to know who said what, which is hard to tell if people don't introduce themselves. So occasionally, we may come up with a warrant article where there's a wording, a spelling error, a grammar thing, and we're all trying to figure out how to express an idea clearly. Traditionally, with your consent, I'll expedite that, because we don't need to have a long discussion with seconds and motions and everything else because somebody misspelled a word in an article. If you're not a resident, you need to sit separately from the voters and not vote, okay? If you are, a department head involved with the town, obviously your input is welcome at this meeting. If you happen to be a non-resident and would like to speak and you're not, say, a town employee or town council or something like that, then I will ask the voters present whether they want to vote to approve that, because that's a traditional practice in New Hampshire town meetings. So, the other important thing to remember is second session of the town meeting happens on Tuesday, March 12th at the fire station. We'll be voting there. We've set a couple records for weather. We're all hoping, and I'm sure the road agent's really hoping, that the weather will cooperate and we won't get 1.5 feet of snow during the course of the election. Polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And of course, everyone should participate. That's also the opportunity to vote on the school warrant. The school deliberative session will be on Wednesday, February 7th at the high school auditorium in Kingston. And obviously, if you have an interest in the school board warrant articles, that would be a great place to be. So, on to the warrant. And I'm going to make one final personal note. I have had more coughing than normal this season, probably because I have a lovely, fluffy, black and white cat temporarily staying with us in our house. And I'm very allergic to cats. So if I get to coughing or so forth and you see me throw a cough drop in, don't worry. So, okay. This is the Newton Town Warrant 2024. To the inhabitants of the town of Newton in the county of Rockingham in the state of New Hampshire, qualified to vote in town affairs, you are hereby notified that the annual meeting of Newton will be held in accordance with New Hampshire RSA 40:13. The first session, that's today, to transact all business other than voting is on Saturday, February 3rd, 2024 at 9 a.m. to be held at the Newton Town Hall, 2 Town Hall Road, Newton, New Hampshire. The second session, voting by official ballot at the polls, is on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, to be held at the Newton Fire Station, 8D Merrimack Road, to choose all necessary town officers for the ensuing year by official ballot, and to vote on all issues before the town of Newton on the official ballot. Polls will open at 8 a.m. and will close no earlier than 8 p.m. First item, of course, is to elect all necessary town officers for the ensuing year. The first warrant article is, after that, Article 2 is a zoning article. There is really no opportunity for amendment, but we can have a brief discussion of it if someone has questions about it. Article 2, are you in favor of the adoption of warrant Article 2 as proposed by the Planning Board to amend Section 30, Floodplain Development Ordinance, as necessary to comply with the requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program? Does the selectman want to speak to that? Do we have anyone to speak to that?
The state of New Hampshire, I've talked about this before at the town meetings, the state of New Hampshire has updated their National Flood Insurance Program. We do have a section of town, I want to say it's the southwest corner, I believe it is, very small area of town to where we do have some residents that this would be concerning with as far as their insurance. And for us to update this would help them so that if anything any type of catastrophe happened, that they would be covered and they would be able to be taken care of insurance-wise with their property. So this is simply, as Bob said, it's a formal thing of just taking what the state of New Hampshire has issued and implementing it in verbiage into our documentation.
Thank you. Any questions on the topic? Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 3.
Could I, Mr. Moderator, could
Yes.
I make a motion? I'd like to motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2.
Okay, do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. There'll be no reconsideration. Let me just, for the benefit of people who aren't old timers here and haven't done this a million times and who might be watching it from afar, the voters have an option in a town meeting of this sort to restrict themselves from going back to an article, reopening discussion, and potentially amending it. It will be common, I think, that that decision will be made. It comes from a historical situation where occasionally people would wait till late in the night and then they'd reopen, an article after most of the people had gone home. I doubt that will happen here, but that's where that procedural item comes from. Okay, so Article 3. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment Number 2 as proposed by the Planning Board for the town zoning ordinances as follows? Amend Section 12, Home Occupations and Home-Based Businesses, subsection B2, to read, there shall be no outdoor activity or use, including storage and parking of commercial vehicles or trailers exceeding 26,000, I think it means pounds, gross vehicle weight, except for the provision of employee parking.
As ex officio of the Select Board to the Planning Board, what's taken place here is that a lot of people have been doing the right thing, stepping up, coming to the Planning Board to get documentation to be able to have their own home business. Because of the newer weights on a lot of these vehicles that are being used for commercial businesses, some of the smaller dump trucks and whatever, they're exceeding the 12,000 pound limit. So the Planning Board wholly endorses this, and what we've done is we've suggested the 26,000 pounds, which puts that weight just under a Class B commercial vehicle, so that these people that are establishing their home-based business, which is primarily so that they can register these vehicles in the state of New Hampshire where they live. All the other parts to the ordinance that are in fact about not being able to have any type of materials and all that in place as it's stated, that will stay the same. It's just to increase the limit for some of these bigger vehicles that some of these people have for their businesses. That's all it is.
Do we have any questions, comments from the audience for any of our members and voters here? Seeing there are none, I'm guessing I'm about to get a motion. That's why I'm kind of looking over this.
You have ESP. I would like to, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes carry. Motion passes. All right, onwards. Article 4. Article 4 is placed where it is because bond article is a bond article, and bond articles kind of come to the top of the stack. And again, I'm saying something for the benefit of people that might be watching this. So this article, we'll get to the budget right after it, but bond articles come first. So Article 4, Road Reconstruction Bond. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5 million as a gross budget to reconstruct approximately 23 miles of roads deemed in need of reconstruction as more particularly identified on the 2010 proposed road reconstruction list derived from the road management study of 2009, which list is dated January 11th, 2010, and to authorize the issuance of bonds or notes, therefore, of not more than $5 million in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment, it being further understood that said bonding authority shall be on the condition that the selectmen will not issue or negotiate bonds or notes for this appropriation in any given year for more than $1 million. It's being contemplated that the overall bonding authority will not lapse until the project is completed, but that the project will be completed in annual increments, borrowing for which shall not exceed $1 million in any given year, and to take all other action relative thereto. This is a special article in accordance with RSA 32. It does require a 3/5 majority in terms of the final vote at the town meeting, or at the second session. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommend a yes vote. And this article has an estimated tax impact of $0.088, which would be about a dime. 0.08 is almost a dime. So,
Dan, would
Comment?
you like to talk on this,
talk on it.
please?
Dan, you want to take that one?
Sure, so, what the?
Dan, I'm impressed you stopped yourself right there.
I did. I put that way low, so hopefully it won't do that. We've been listening to the townspeople, and we drive on the roads, and we obviously know that we're way behind on where we should be in repairing our roads. So this is, we've had meetings with the road agent, and we feel that this is the best route to go in order to get our roads up to snuff and be able to maintain them. You all right? And be able to maintain the roads going forward. In other words, we're not going to fix them all one year, and then by the time they all need to be fixed again, we're going to have to go out for another bond. That's not the plan. The plan is to make our roads manageable. When I was going through budgets and doing everything, 1 year and 4 years ago, the paving line in the highway department budget was $40,000. That is nowhere near enough what we need to do, even to just maintain the roads. So this is hopefully going to give us that leg up to get us to where we need to be in order to have a plan. We have a plan to fix all the roads, and going forward, being able to maintain them so they're not so bad and we don't have a ton of roads failing at the same time.
Thank you.
And if anybody noticed that at first when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, the bond was at $10 million. The select board has lowered it to $5 million after reviewing and going over what we saw and what we felt that was needed for monies to accomplish what we wanted over the period of maybe 10 years to be able to get us back on track.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this issue?
Mr. Moderator, can I, for 1 second?
I'm sorry, let me hold off because I've got another selectman, yes.
So just, I'd like to make a motion at this time to update the date, which is the 2010 date. We have an updated list. I would like to add this to it. And so it's a January 26, 2024 update on the roads.
So, okay, let me just, and again, this is the kind of informality we'll move us quicker. So the motion would be to make an amendment which says which list is dated January 11th, 2010. Instead would be which list is dated
January 26, 2024.
January 26, 2024. Okay, so do we have a second on that amendment?
Second.
Do we have someone with a, yes, sir. On the amendment.
Yeah, so is that also going to change the 2010 and 2009
Change the
dates
management study
on the motion?
Okay. It will be the, okay, thank you for the clarity. The road management study of 2029 will be changed to January 26, 2024.
Yeah, hang on. So it's instead of the 2010 proposed reconstruction list, that becomes the 2024?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the first 2010 goes to 2024. What about the management study derived from the road management study of
That's the
2009?
26.
That stays the same. Okay.
Yep.
No. So,
No, that's 2024, right?
It's all 2024.
so all 2024.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let me summarize that, and then why don't we move to discussion of the amendment, because I think that's going to be very quick, and then we'll get back to the main issue. So I'm going to speculate that there's a newer study, namely it just got done, and therefore we're going to use the new one instead of the old one.
No, it's 14 years old. We're going to use that one.
Yeah, we'll use the old one instead, right? We're going to use the new one. So in fact, wherever it says a date that's like 2010 or 2009, we're going to toss it, and it's going to say 2024, which that's now, that's the new report, and the actual list is from January 26, 2024. So
Bingo.
Yes.
any comments, discussion about that amendment? I think, yes.
Question, is that,
Microphone, please.
Yeah, please use the microphone and say your name.
is that 2024 list, study, et cetera, going to be available on the website before voting so that people can look at it?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So, again, on the amendment, we got a motion, we got a second. Any other discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Amendment passes. Okay, so now perhaps we reopen discussion about the issue as a whole, not the date of the study, but the issue as a whole. Yes.
Mary Reardon. I'm just, need a little clarity. Are we getting a bond, one bond for $5 million that we're going to spend in $1 million increments annually? Or are we getting a $1 million bond every year for 5 years? Because the two, it says in the beginning we're going to get a bond, and then at the end it says the selectmen are not issue or negotiate bonds for more than $1 million, so I'm just a little confused.
Right, so there will be no more than $1 million spent in 1 year, during the course of the 1 year. So it might only be 500,000 that gets spent during the course of that year. It can't exceed that $1 million, so it could take longer than 5 years.
So
If I could stop, I'm just going to stop for a second to speed it up. I think the question is,
Are we getting
From a
five
bond
$1
point of
million
are
bonds?
the
or
selectmen
one
going
$5
to seek
million
$1 million bond in the first year, $1 million in the second year, $1 million in the third year, and $1 million in the fifth year at most, or $5 million in the first year and then just spend it in $1 million
Well, like I
increments?
just said, when you spend and appropriate the money, that's the only, what you're paying. You're not paying, it's like taking a home equity loan out on your house.
So we're getting one bond, that's my question. Are we getting one bond or are we getting
Can we
5
let
bonds?
Jim, can we let,
Mr. Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The answer to your question is that it will be a $5 million note, but it will be structured so that we only pay interest on what we draw down. And the reason for the $1 million at the end is to give the community reassurance that we're not going to spend $5 million in 1 year. And it's designed, obviously, to get support for that. But you can structure the loan so you only you only pay interest on what you draw down. And going forward, obviously, hopefully this will be done. May I also say, Mr. Moderator, you can't live on the highway block grant in this town. It's only $50,000. You need money to pave your roads. Your infrastructure is the most important, aside from public safety, aspect of what these people do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. Well, I have nothing against the road bond amount or 1 million. What I do have a concern with is the estimated tax impact identified as .088. If you look at the social services for 30,000, the estimated tax impact is .047. You double that, that's $60,000, but we're talking about $1 million.
because you're paying interest on the loan,
So-
not the loan.
Well, when are you paying the loan? If we're just paying interest, when are we paying the loan? You still have to pay that
You
too.
can't figure out the amount that you're gonna pay right now, because rates change.
I'm just saying .088
I didn't put that on there,
is
so I'm not sure,
very,
but-
very misleading
we need
for
one person
$1
talking at a
million.
time.
You're right. You are
So
right.
I think that needs to be corrected, and it needs to be expressed exactly what that impact is going to be.
Thank you.
Lisa, while you're there, would you
Mr.
make
Romero, we need to do like one person talking
That's
at a time. So if you want to talk, that's fine, but why don't we,
Stay there.
you're next, your turn, but we got to
Stay
do
there.
like one at a time.
Lisa, would you be interested in making a motion? Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Making a motion to authorize the town administrator to research the tax impact and make the appropriate amendment before we go to ballot?
So moved.
Also,
I
this-
make a motion for the town administrator to do the research analysis to provide an accurate tax impact before the warrant goes to ballot on March 12th.
Okay, before there's even an attempt to second that, I have to
Did I
kind
do
of
that
jump
wrong?
in that it's, you can only make amendments to this, and I don't think you want to amend the actual article that's going to get printed on the ballot to say, and oh, by the way,
Oh, I see.
the town
Yeah, no,
administrator,
I don't want
because it's
that.
retroactive and it doesn't
Yeah,
make any sense.
No,
We'll have to do that after.
Right,
I'm willing to do it
I
at a
will-
town meeting.
Just for the purposes of efficiency, it is possible for the voters at a meeting like this to make a non-binding referendum on the town which recommends that they do something. And in this case,
That's what
it
I'm
doesn't have a
doing.
legal binding on the town, but I'm guessing that Mr. O'Mara, if he hears the sense of the room, is that he should go do that. We'll put it on his list of things to do. So I'm going to ask everyone in the room, if procedurally, are you willing to temporarily hold this article in abeyance for like 5 minutes so we can take a quick vote on a non-binding referendum from the voters in the room?
Yes.
All in favor, yes? Anyone opposed? Okay, so we're just holding that warrant for like 5 minutes. We're going to go out of order. The motion in this case is for a non-binding referendum of the voters recommending that Mr. O'Mara prepare for the selectmen an update on the tax impact and then get it done so we can get on the ballot in time to the clerk?
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
I'm sorry?
It needs to be done by Tuesday so it gets on the ballot.
Correct.
Right. So, any discussion on that proposed statement? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Mr. O'Mara, I think you have a new thing on your to-do list.
Quite all right.
No problem. All right, so back to Article 4. Yes, sir.
Roger Hamel. I got a couple of questions. One, how long is this authorization? Is it just, you got it forever until you spend $5 million? Is that what we're being asked to vote on? And the other question is, what would the term be of the bond? Or that you're basically giving the selectmen authority to give it. They can do a 10-year bond or a 30-year bond. They can do whatever they feel in their best, is in the best interest of the town.
Who would like to respond to that? Do we have Mr. O'Mara, one of the selectmen?
No, go.
No, I was just going to say, in the, whatever, when we as a board give Jim the okay, if this passes, to go out and start doing the research, it's going to be based on whatever the terms and conditions of that bond.
No problem. Yeah, we got a mic that's misbehaving.
Okay. Whatever those, it's just, is in business, right? You're gonna go out, you're gonna look at the terms, the conditions, and whatever's best, gonna be best for the town. I think if I had my druthers, I think I'd rather pay it down over a longer period of time. But I think we have to let the data come back and tell us that. And that's gonna be, whatever the interest rates are, whatever the conditions are behind that. So that's how I would look at that.
To follow up on that then, if you don't know at this point what the term is going to be, how is he going to be able to calculate a tax impact?
We're gonna let him figure that out over the next couple of days.
I can,
Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I can speak to that. I arrived at the tax impact based on the annual payment for $1 million drawdown. Even though we may not do it, I had to go on the higher side for the sake of accuracy. So the tax impact here is an annual impact that is a drawdown of 1 million max, according to the article, and I believe it was 4% that I got the chart from, the repayment chart.
So but that only does the interest and not the principal.
Both.
But if you don't know how long it's going to take to pay off the principal, that the amount that you're paying towards the principal is going to change. A 10-year bond, you're paying a whole lot less, more principal than on a 30-year bond each year.
Agreed. And this is principal and interest. That's where the tax impact comes from.
For how long a bond? What's the
For the
term?
duration of the bond as it's drawn down. So for lack of a better term, it doesn't have an end date. It's up to the road agent to spend that money but not more than $1 million a year to do the infrastructure necessary to repair roads.
But you're not only paying interest, you're paying principal. And that principal, it depends upon how many years you're going to spread the principal over. Is going to change the payment.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
The way I have structured them in the past is, as Bob said, it's like a home loan. You pay principal and interest based on what you draw down, not on the whole $5 million.
Right, but it still depends upon how long you're paying it over.
Oh. So it would be a fixed amount as you draw down, and it's going to increase over time when you start to draw down more money over the years.
Yeah, but it's different if it's a
Right.
10-year
Can I
bond
try
or
to
a
shortcut
30-year
this a little
bond.
bit? I think the issue is, and it's a very legitimate question, is for the purposes of the tax impact, you have to pick a term.
Correct.
Because if you borrowed $1 million and you agreed to pay it back in a year, just as, for math purposes, then your tax impact's way higher than 8 cents. If you borrow $1 million and agree to pay it back in 30 years, then the tax impact of that's probably less than your
Correct.
dime. So
And
you just need to give like a hypothetical, and I think you
Exactly.
can give a range of the tax impact. I don't think the
With
law
an
requires you,
estimated
and I'm looking
term
at
of, yeah.
Chris right now, question of the morning. I don't think the law in New Hampshire requires that when you specify a tax impact, that you can't specify a range.
Correct.
So you might be able to get by with saying it goes between these two numbers, and that is based on your analysis of a term between, 5 years and 30 years or something. But anyway, so that's a very legitimate issue, but I don't want to spend the day talking about the minutia of how we're going to recalculate an estimated tax impact on a bond that nobody's got yet, and nobody, because it's kind of a hypothetical. But it's going to be an issue. We have to have some number on there for the voters to use for guidance. Probably the safest thing is give them the range.
I was just,
Ms. Gagne.
I would like to make a motion to amend this warrant article, which will also, I think, help clarify this. After it says, will not lapse until the project is completed, but that the project will be completed, add in by December 31st, 2035. 10 years, or 2034 rather, 10 years. What that does is it puts an end date as to when they can spend the $5 million, and then continue with in annual increments, et cetera. What that says is the board can get a bond for $5 million up to 10-year term, and the anticipated tax impact would be up to $1 million for the year, principal and interest. So, but the only amendment is the
I was
project
going to
year.
say, if you could help us out,
Yeah.
please just say the amendment again.
I did.
Without the,
Okay, so.
just the actual
The
words.
project will be completed by December 31st, 2034. That's the whole amendment.
Okay, and then after that, it continues, but
Continues with the
that the project will be
annual-
completed in annual increments.
Correct.
And, right, so it says,
I don't get it.
authority will not lapse until the proposed amendment, I'm just saying it to make sure we got it right. The authority will not lapse until the project is completed, but that the project is completed by December 31st, 2034, comma, but that the project will be completed in annual increments? Is that correct, Lisa?
No extra but in there. So again, it is, the will not lapse until the project is completed, but that the project will be completed, insert, by December 31st, 2024.
Got it.
34, end insert, in annual increments, et cetera.
Correct, thank you. I had it in the wrong spot. That's why I read it back. Okay, so do we have a second? Second, okay. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Hamel.
So with that amendment, that amends the bonding authority, but not the length of the bond. Is that?
No, just the opposite.
Is that correct?
Other way around.
It limits the length of the bond to the 10 years, to that December 31st, 2034.
So you're saying that if in 2030, they take the last $1 million, they would only be able to bond it for 5 years?
Say that again?
If they take the last $1 million in 2030, they would only be able to bond it for 5 years.
Project would be completed.
So the project is complete, but the paying off of the bond would go beyond that.
Yes, until the bond is paid off.
So that's what I'm saying. This is, that date ends, is the date, the last date that they could issue bonds, but not the last date that they would pay off bonds. I just want to make sure that what this is saying is what I...
Let me just stop for a second, because I think there's two things that are kind of going by each other. My understanding, and I'm going to look to Mr. O'Mara in a second, or the selectmen, is there's one bond. And that bond is in the form of an account that you can draw down against, like a home equity loan. So therefore, they will need to create that bond, which will have some payoff period, before they can do anything, right? So they won't be making new bonds after the first one.
But
They may be drawing down against it, but they're still going to have a bond that runs for a particular and finite period of time.
But that's what I'm saying. If the bond has to end in 3034,
Yep.
then the payoff of the last pieces of the money that you borrow is going to be very short.
You bet.
So that's why I think, that limiting it this way is a bad idea in terms of you could end up actually having to pay off the last piece basically the year you use it or the year after you use it, which would really have a huge tax impact. You're much better off spreading it much beyond, once the project's done, be able to pay off for 10 years after that.
Good point. Okay, onwards. Other discussion on the amendment? I'm looking at someone who looks like they want to talk. Any other discussion on the amendment? So we're going to take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Right there.
Yeah, I think the ayes carried, but if you want, we can do a count vote on that. Okay, so why don't we'll do a show of hands count vote, and I'm going to ask my
Make a
supervisors of the checklist to do the count, please. So, all in favor, raise your hand and hold it there.
jump in, do a different amendment.
You got to count, supervisors, and by the way, you're welcome to vote in that, and count, you're not excluded from that vote. Okay, how about we put our hands down, all opposed? Thank you. That's my count as well. So, the ayes carry.
If I may, does Mr. Hamel want to make a different motion for an amendment? You don't have to, I'm just saying.
No, I mean, I'm concerned about the length of time. I would think that propose that we change the 2034 to 2044. At least allow, well, Mike,
I think what you're, from your initial statement, I think what you're trying to express is that maybe the 2034 date is the date of the last withdrawal, that you can extend the payout term, keep paying that down for another 10 years.
That's exactly what I want to do. If you got some good verbiage for an amendment, please use it, and then I will move it.
So I think, and words in your own mouth, but you're trying to amend it so that the $5 million bond can be put in place, drawn down as needed up until 2034. However, payoff term can be up to 2044.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. That's where I was going when I heard, I thought that was a better idea.
I won't be here.
So could you give verbiage of a motion so that Mary Jo can get it down?
I'm already out of this sleep.
Well, right, hang on for a second. Procedurally, we need an amendment, and I'm a little concerned, and this is kind of an informal statement. I'm not speaking pro or con against such an amendment, but I'm a little concerned that there are a set of requirements related to funding, and we're stating here that we're authorizing the selectmen to issue and negotiate bonds or notes and determine the rate of interest thereon and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment, but then we're attempting to create an amendment which basically says, except for some set of conditions. So I'm looking at the town council in the hope that we don't create, I don't want to create an amendment that's going to get to the RSA, not to the RSA, the DRA, and they're going to say, no, you can't do that. So may I make a suggestion that perhaps somebody spend a minute, Mr. Connolly, maybe you want to spend a minute thinking, and then just come up with some text, and we need I mean, from an amendment point of view, we need a piece of text that people can either say yes or no on. I mean, discuss whether they want to do it, and then say yes or no. Right? In other words, what's that?
It's going to take 5 minutes to...
You can. That's what I'm saying. Is that okay with everybody if we just let them do that? Now, may I request or suggest that in the meantime, our road agent, and the guy who probably knows as much about this as anybody, has been patiently waiting to speak to the issue as a whole. So I think, even though we're talking about some of the details of the funding, it might be useful to spend the time when they're conferring and trying to come up with text to hear about the thing broadly, because then we'll switch back.
Thank you. Mike Pavero, Newton Road Agent. Yeah, I'm going to change the tone a little bit while they're hashing out the financial end of it. I'm here to talk about the need for this. The selectmen for multiple years, TA this year, and I have all together looked at a method on getting our roads back in the condition that are acceptable. The bond, the budget, is all up to all the voters. I will tell you, in the seat that I sit in during the year for the Newton Road Agent, it's very frustrating. I get a lot of calls from residents that are asking the basic minimum. They want their roads fixed. I can't fix them. I don't have the funding. I haven't had the funding. As Jim has said it and Dan has said it, I have a line item for paving was $40,000 up to 2 years ago. We bumped it to $55,000. You can get big driveways that you can't pave for $55,000. I have a $50 million infrastructure to maintain here in this town. I don't have the funding. This bond gets us in a position where we can repair the infrastructure in a timely fashion. If we don't do this, based upon the evaluation that you haven't seen that Jim has given to the selectmen, which is just current this month, it's $4.4 million of road that's deficient right now. Based upon my budget, that'll take 37 years to repair. A road infrastructure typically only has a 25-year life cycle. Pretty basic math, folks. I can't get to it before the beginning of it has already fallen apart. This is up to the voters and residents in this town, obviously. If you want the highway department, whether it be me or anybody else that sits in that road agency, to be able to repair your roads, we need the funding. This makes the most sense. This does not eliminate, at some point soon, the budget line item for paving to go up. This only repairs the roads that are deficient right now. And you're trying to calculate something that I think is going to be very difficult to calculate. Because we're not going to know what we spend that year. We put a cap on it at $1 million. That's probably a good cap. There might be some years we only spend, because of what that area we're going to repair is, 600. The next year it might be 1.1. It's going to fluctuate. So I don't know how you're going to nail down a cost per year per tax household. I really don't. I think a limit on it, which was, well, they're conferring back there, which I think you have to put a limit on it. I think realistically, this plan will go 8 to 10 years. I think that's probably realistic on using the roads that we have in this sheet and getting them repaired. But the line item budget has to go up in order to chase all these roads as repaired. We have a lot of roads in town right now that have fallen apart. Ones are fixed in the past 15 years. There's a pavement preservation plan that all highways and roads use. When a road gets to a certain condition, when it's been rebuilt, you have to do maintenance to it. If you don't, it deteriorates faster. So the roads that are fixed will fall apart faster if you don't keep a maintenance plan in place. Then you're chasing it faster. I'm only here to tell you there's a direct need for this. And if you don't do something, bond makes the most sense. The road's just going to get worse by the day, by the year. And I hate getting the phone calls, and really frustrating to tell residents I can't do anything because I don't have the funding. That's about it. Thank you.
Any other discussion about the general thing before we hone back in on this financing issue? Mr. Doggett.
I read this, and I consider myself a reasonably intelligent person. It appears that there's a conflict here between what's being said and what's written. We're talking about something that's the equivalency of a home equity loan. I've had it, many people have had them. That where you start off with, you basically get an agreement with a bank to expend up, not to exceed a certain amount, and you can draw from that and you make payments. However, this starts off with the selectmen negotiating for $5 million, but then further on, they can't issue more than $1 million worth of notes per year. I believe what it really needs to talk about is that they will negotiate a $5 million bond not to exceed $1 million in expenditures per year. In reading this, you know, it sounds like there's a conflict built in that either the raise and appropriate amount needs to be reduced to $1 million but able to be done 5 times, or you have to take away the idea of selling bonds every year for 5 years not to exceed $1 million, or however long it takes you to hit that $1 million. And I would like somebody to explain the conflict.
Thank you. And that's a very interesting point. And if I may, with the approval of the voters, I think I want to bring that to the attention of the crew in the back who's trying to figure out the other amendment. Mr. Hamill and the people working on that issue, Mr. Conley, et cetera, Ms. Gagne, may I interrupt you for a moment, as it were? And I'm sorry to kind of throw this over the fence, but I think you were working in parallel. Mr. Doggett raised a very interesting point, which I'm going to attempt to summarize in the hope that while you're thinking about that issue, you can think about this as well. Apparently, and I think Mr. Doggett may have a good point, the discussion of the textual structure of the warrant article says that the first is to authorize the issuance of bonds or notes therefore of not more than $5 million, right? But simultaneously, it says that the selectmen will only issue or negotiate bonds or notes in any given year for more than $1 million. So if you read those two together, then you have a problem, because you can never negotiate the $5 million credit line. You can only negotiate a series of $1 million credit lines. That is, while you're looking at that text, look at it in the context of saying, is there a conflict between the town trying to get a single $5 million, let's say, credit line, but it says that the selectmen shall not issue or negotiate bonds or notes for this appropriation in any given year for more than $1 million. But it seemed like the plan was to get a $5 million bond and negotiate or take withdrawals from it or expenditures from it of no more than $1 million a year. Right, but so I guess I might also be directing that comment more to the town council and the people at that table. Could you please think about that issue for a few moments?
Mr. Moderator, can I make a motion?
You can.
I'd like to motion that we pause discussion of this warrant article and move on to the rest of the warrant and come back when people are ready.
Do we have a second for that? Okay, we have a second for that. We will have a brief discussion on that, and I hate to do this to the town council, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. If he gets upset, we'll know. Normally, the first article ahead of the other articles is the bonding article, and I think that's done so people have an easy notice, can get to the meeting, and don't have to stay up all night to talk about the bond. But as far as I can tell, everybody who is here to talk about the bond is here. We're not dissuading them, preventing them, or anything else, and in fact, a group of people are working on it. It would make sense to me, and I think it would be acceptable with the context of the law that says you deal with bonds first, if we put the bonding aside as proposed by this article, and up to you voters, talk about some other stuff on the warrant to use the time effectively. And then we'll cycle back to that in a few minutes when they have an idea what they're doing. So I'm not trying to sway one way or the other, but I think it's up to you guys to decide if you want to switch over and work on another topic in the meantime. So comments, discussion, or questions on that? Seeing there are none, all in favor of taking the next warrant article and talking about it?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so while they're working on that, why don't we go ahead and start to work on the operating budget article? Although, if I may, and just if the voters will accept this for a second, do you think it would be desirable,
I
since
hear
those
where you're
people are
going.
busy, to perhaps pick
I'm
another article?
I'm reading your mind.
Pick another article that's-
So I would motion to proceed out of order and start with Article 6.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so yeah, that I think makes perfect sense. Let's work on some of the other articles that some of them are kind of straightforward that we should go through, and we don't need everyone participating. So we're going to skip ahead. Obviously, we're going to come back, but we're going to skip ahead to Article 6, the Recreation Revolving Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Recreation Revolving Fund previously established to fund programs including a part-time coordinator position. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact.
And Matt's going to speak on this.
Thank you. I'll just simply state, this is a question going out to the town. If you travel in the circles like I've traveled the last 10 years on the board, we often get asked why the town doesn't fund recreation, things
You
like
were white when you
other
came in, now you look like a Native
other
American.
towns in the area might do so. We have a fully volunteer recreation commission with only one paid member of the recreation commission. she's paid as a secretary to take minutes, but she does a lot more than that. So this is basically a question out to the voters. Do they want to take money out of the unassigned fund balance to subsidize a part-time coordinator and fund programs? Could be summer programs, even other activities through the year, whether it's for children or seniors or whatever. So I would simply state this is a growth question for the voters as to whether they want to fund something like this.
Thank you. Do we have discussion on Article 6? Yes, please.
Having a hard time finding the rec thing in this very small printed, Mary Reardon. So what you're saying is we're going to fund a new position in town
We could.
through this warrant article, that the money is going to come from the unassigned fund balance.
Correct. It's not, so if you read it, it's not just a position, right? If you read the warrant article,
Right.
it
And-
could be a position, it's also programs to
Right.
fund, yeah.
So the position will then be in the budget in subsequent years.
It would be in the proposed budget
Yes, the proposed budget.
in subsequent years.
So will it show up in the default budget next year because it's in,
It would not. It needs one cycle, correct? So we'd have to put it in the proposed budget next year,
year?
have it approved in that budget, and then it would be part of the default, one cycle. The warrant article doesn't count as that cycle.
okay. So the $50,000 for the part-time position plus some level of activities, but we don't know which part of this 50 goes to the position and which part goes to the activities.
Right, so 50,000 would go into the existing revolving fund, and then the Recreation Commission, as their charter is, they decide how they want to spend it. So they might come forward to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, we want to spend $10,000 on this part-time position, and the Board of Selectmen would have to approve that.
So at this point in time, we do not know what that amount might be.
Correct, yeah.
And so we don't know what effect it will have on us in the future, because we don't know what it is now.
Right, well, you would know in the proposed budget.
Yeah, the following year, like was stated, that would come again before the voters in order to approve it if it was going to try to be put into the budget.
Okay, so we can fund positions through unassigned fund balances,
Yes, yeah, yep.
but we don't know how much it is. We
Well,
only
there's a
know
lot
it's- We only know it's $50,000 altogether. It used to be we had a warrant article to fund some activities.
Senior trips and stuff like that,
And
yeah.
and is that included in this 50?
That's in no, it's in the proposed budget.
It's in the proposed budget.
That's
So
already
this
in the
Recreation.
proposed, yeah.
So this is $50,000 of things that we've never spent on before. Is that, could I understand that correctly?
It's $50,000 to fund potential programs that, to use your words, we've never had before.
And if they want to spend it, they have to go to the Board of Selectmen.
Correct, yeah.
The Board of Selectmen says, yes, you can spend that money. Otherwise, it sits in this revolving fund forever.
Yeah, yep, it could, until it's used.
Never gets used, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
to
thank
give
you.
you the
Well,
example.
part of it is because, as the board has looked at with society today, that a lot of the children are staying indoors and they're not outdoors and they're not getting involved socially. So a lot of that, the mental issues that are taking place in the world today is because children don't know how to be involved socially. So that is part of what we're proposing, is trying to help our children to gain better social values and to be able to come together and to be able to do things and not become so isolated the way that they are. And that is part of the reason why we're trying to get a part-time rec person and get some of these other programs to which we would think and hope could get put in place to where the children would become more involved rather than sitting at home in front of an iPad 24/7.
I have no disagreement with that statement that kids should go out and play in the dirt. But it's it just seems that we don't really know what we're going to use this money for, and that's my
Well, we have to see what's available and what we can do.
We're trying to expand what the town does for its residents, old and young, everything. We have to start somewhere.
Yep.
We can't nail down exactly what the job is going to pay. I can give you a range of what other towns pay. It's probably like $24,000, $23,000 for a part-time rec commissioner. And then the rest of that money is going to other programs to expand what we can do. I can't put all that information into the warrant article, right? We've been over it a couple times during meetings and stuff like that, but it's difficult to put everything that we want into a warrant article, right? Otherwise, it's this long. Our goal was to expand what the town offers to its residents through this warrant article. That's the plan.
And at the end of the day, like I said off the top, it's a question out to the town. If they don't think this is worthwhile, they vote no. If they do, they vote yes. I'll give you an example. This particular revolving fund 3 years ago had about $39,000 in there. If you may recall, we went into that and we took money out of that in order to finish the playground over at Greenie Park with some money, some donations and stuff. That might be what we do this with in 20 years. You say, forever. Well, until it's used, right? So in 20 years, the town might vote to redo the playground or whatever. So the fact of the matter is we have a lot of revolving accounts like this. We can't tell you exactly what we're going to use everything for. It's a bank account, right? And it's an option.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
I have no qualm with anything that you've all said. It's just nice that now we know that there are certain categories of things that you expect to spend this money on, as opposed to just saying we're going to spend it. That's
I completely understand. We're just limited to the words that we can put in there.
Thank you. Ms. Gagne.
I have a couple of issues with this particular warrant article.
Just to make it clear, since you returned from the discussion on the other, this is
I'm on
Article
recreation.
Yeah, Article
Yep,
6.
I am on the
No problem.
correct warrant article.
No, I'm not suggesting you aren't. I'm just making it clear to the people who might be watching remotely and kind of not following.
Okay. One of the problems I have is that they've lumped a brand-new position, which would become part of the operating budget in future years, with the programming that we have separated out in the past, which means people who may vote against this because they don't want that coordinator will also be voting against funding senior trips and children programs. Yes, they will, because
It's already in the budget. The $5,000 warrant article from last year is in the rec budget.
And if that budget fails, then it's still not paid for.
That's not necessarily true.
It may or may not be paid.
We can't go back and forth with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Needless to
I feel
say,
like I'm in one of our normal meetings.
Right, it's not like a normal, but she's done, you
to
guys can
say,
talk.
I would prefer to see this because it really does not make it clear how much they're expecting to pay for a part-time coordinator, how many hours, what the benefits are going to be that will be paid, if any. And I would like to make a motion to amend this warrant article to strike out including a part-time coordinator position and to decrease the sum to $30,000.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the amendment. Ms. Gagne, please, sit tight for a second. I'm going to repeat the amendment because I think these guys are going to speak to it. Other people will. I just want to make sure we have the amendment text correctly. So the amendment, there is two amendments. One is the reduction of $50,000 to $30,000. The second one would be to delete the phrase that says, including a part-time coordinator position. So it would just say to fund programs.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just, for the benefit of those of us who have to track the verbiage. I guess, why don't we take discussion related to that amendment?
Sure. Now, my recommendation for this is because I would like the board to go back to the drawing board and create a new warrant article for next year to put that recreation coordinator position on it. I'm not saying we don't need one. I'm just saying we can't hide it because people will vote against funding the programs if they are against the coordinator. Let's split it up and not force them to make that decision because of the coordinator position itself.
Thank you. Mr. Burrell, I think you wanted to, do you want to speak to this?
I can't remember what I was saying beforehand, but Lisa did say something that I think you were probably back there when we talked about it. What you said was incorrect, and I heard Mary Jo over there. She might not agree with it, but maybe town council can weigh in on this. If, let's say, for example, we did, this was successful, we hired a rec coordinator. Rec coordinator works for a year, and then next year the board decides to put in the proposed budget the rec coordinator position now, so whatever it is for that salary. It needs to go through that cycle at that point, right, as the proposed budget before it's part of the default. So to answer the question that came up before, just to make it clear, because if this were to pass as worded, this does not make it part of the budget for next year unless it's part of the proposed budget and it's successful.
This says including a part-time coordinator position. It does not say for 1 year. That makes it a permanent position. Once the people vote for this new position, this new employee, it then becomes in perpetuity until they vote
They vote the
against
other
it.
way, yeah.
Which means it does become part of the default. It has been agreed upon.
I'm seeing the town council wince, but I'm going to say that that's probably a tough call, because you can make a claim that you don't have, that the voters don't have the right to hire and fire, but I would suggest they have the unambiguous right to create and remove positions. I mean, I think we all know if the...
Zero that line item now next year, but that's not...
I'm not talking about zeroing the line item. I think the voters have a right to say, we will have such and such as an employee in our town, or we won't. And I think once they've said we're going to hire somebody for that, then it's incumbent on the selectmen to hire somebody for that. So I think the voters saying you're going to have that position makes that position. You might not fill it. You could say we couldn't find anybody, but I think once they're making that vote, they're making that vote. I mean, I think that's. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm
For a year,
no.
for 1 year.
This is for the funding for that position for a year. And well, if it's not funded the next year through the budget process, then the position doesn't see that.
Yeah, to the extent if you zeroed it out and they didn't make a transfer into it, or try to make a transfer into it. But anyway, but the amendment we have on the floor is just to strike that section, which does not implicate one way or the other. Okay, so let's get back to the amendment. Do we have more discussion on not the other aspects of this, the implications perhaps, but of the actual amendment? That is, are the voters here? Do you have any other further comments on the specific amendment, changing the amount from $50,000 to $30,000 and striking the phrase including a part-time coordinator position? Do we have any more comments on that? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That looks like the nays carry. So, it is as it is. Do we have any further discussion on the article as a whole?
Say it, Matt.
Seeing there's no discussion,
We gotta
Article 6 will go.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
No, too late.
Yeah. Marcella Vincent, I'd like to know the position you're trying to fill at that point in time, what the requirements are. Do they have to have a specific education on recreation or children backgrounds or things like that? If so, that's going to cost more money for the town at that point in time.
I sent a rough draft of the job description to the rec
I'm
department.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I sent a rough draft of the job description to the rec department last week.
So, if I may, what you're talking about is voter's guide type information, which Dan provided. So it would be in the voter's guide, which everybody can look at online, or they can take a copy at the town hall. We're restricted as to what we can say in the warrant article, right? But exactly what you're talking about would be provided for everybody to read before they vote.
Okay, and the current secretary, does she perform most all these duties at this point in time?
I would say she, not all of them, pretty darn close, yeah. But not all. Yeah, not necessarily. She's online. I saw her right there, and everybody, I'm gonna point her out because she does a great job. She is the rec commission essentially, and she does it without even blinking an eye, without even pushing back. She will do whatever we want, and I hope she's in this job for 30 years, but if she's not, the town is going to lose a lot of stuff that they took for granted. So,
Well,
Pat, 30 years sound good to you, Pat? No, sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Meara.
Ladies and gentlemen, and the folks at home, Newton is not unlike any other small community. You rely greatly on volunteers. That pool is shrinking to the point of drying up. So things that you, for example, I'll use the road agent, goes out of his way to contribute to the community. If he doesn't run for re-election, those contributions go away. I take the Conservation Commission as an example. Clearing trails is not for 90-year-old people lugging a chainsaw. Things are changing and you need to know it. And we need to pay for things that we previously enjoyed from volunteers. It's not an all-at-once thing, it's gonna be evolutional. But you really need to keep in mind, nobody's lining up outside town hall. I wanna vote, I wanna volunteer. It's not happening.
They're not even here.
So I think we need to recognize that. And just as an aside, I've been in communities before where the Conservation Commission was entirely voluntary, that I got them an operating budget because they needed it, because they don't have the money or the equipment to do the job. But that's just an example. I'm not saying it has to happen overnight, and I've only been here for a year. I see a lot of people who give of their time and don't get compensated, and those days are waning.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Ms. Gagne.
Okay, so let me try this the other way.
Lisa, did you wear that shirt for a
I
reason
did.
today? Can we get the camera on that shirt?
Yes, I did. All right, I would like to propose a different amendment, this time to reduce the sum to $25,000 and to strike out programs including. Oh my God. So that it will read, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of, insert the word of, the sum of $25,000 to be deposited into the Recreation Revolving Fund previously established to fund a part-time coordinator position. Everything else is the same. I just don't want this article to be muddied. People want the coordinator, let's make it focused on that coordinator.
You do need that word of, no matter what. I just noticed that.
If I may say, we already caught that one, and I noted that sometimes the moderator just fixes stuff with the clerk. We already had that one, but
Okay.
it's fine. We're not going to take a down vote
On
or an
the
up
of.
vote to affect whether we put of between the first word and the amount of money, because we already did that behind your back because we figured that was a typo. So, okay, so this amendment, I'm just going to repeat the amendment, and then we'll be looking for a second at that point. But so the amendment is just to change the $50,000 amount to $25,000 and to strike the words programs including, so it will read to fund a part-time coordinator position. That's correct?
Correct.
That's textually correct.
Yep.
Second. Okay, we have a second?
And that is based on the statement by Selectman Guide that the programs are included in the operating budget. And that's why I'm willing to do that.
Senior.
That's some of the programs. We're looking to expand the programs, which
I
are going to
still-
require additional
Let's go one at a
money.
time.
Just
That's
call
fine.
it.
I still want to see them broken out. So let's go with the coordinator, remove the funding programs from this particular article. That's my purpose.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment.
So I'll speak to it. I actually came to the board with 25,000, if I remember correctly. That's exactly the amount that I came to the board when I wanted this in the warrant article. And the board had come to the conclusion, which you can tell, is that we wanted to fund other things as well. We wanted to do more. Seeing as what we're getting now is we probably should have just added another warrant article for, for programming. But I'm willing to do whatever the town wants, obviously. That's why we're here, that's why we serve. So if that's what you think it needs to be to pass, then I'm in favor of it, but that was our idea. So everybody knows, we're not trying to hide anything, we're not trying to sneak anything in, we were trying to do more for the town.
Thank you.
And I would just add to that, I said it off the top, it's a growth question. If you think $25,000 will fund the growth that we hear from a lot of people about, then 25,000 it is. But we're talking about more programs and more things that are not in existence at the moment. So,
Other discussion on the amendment? Seeing there is none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
nay.
Nay.
That's going to be a hand count, yeah, that's awful close. So, same hand count as procedure as before. I'm going to ask my supervisors of the checklist to count. I'm going to ask everyone in favor, put your hand up and hold it up. Okay, everyone, you got the count? Everyone opposed? Okay?
Opposed has it.
Yeah, the opposed has it. Yeah, exactly.
The numbers?
8 yes, 12 no.
Yeah.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6.
So moved.
Yeah, we haven't reached a point in time where you can raise that.
I thought so, that's why I made the motion. So,
Yeah,
I don't know, do we want
Just
to
to make it
vote on
clear,
it?
once we've finished with an article, we can say, okay, we're not going to come back to it. But technically, we haven't really finished with this one because we haven't
Wait,
got
did you
the-
motion to reconstrict?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't,
You move
can't do
the
that.
question
Now,
first.
I'm
yeah, you'd have-
sorry?
you'd have to
Move the question first.
So, for those who are watching or aren't familiar with this thing, there's a bunch of sort of parliamentary procedural things that come up in town meeting. One of the things you can do is say, I want to move the question, which means we're done amendments and stuff at that point. You're voting on, okay, I'm not going to amend that anymore. I'm not going to discuss it anymore. If we were in traditional town meeting, that would be when you took the vote, the ultimate vote up or down. We don't do that until election day. So to move the question here just means we're going to stop talking about it and put it on the ballot in the condition it's in. So I'm kind of guessing I'm about to hear that motion.
I am going to motion to move the question forward for Article 6.
Get a second. There's not much discussion on that normally, otherwise we'd end up with an endless argument about that too in some circumstances. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So
Just
there'll be-
point of order, that's the first time we've done that this morning.
correct.
So do we have to go back and do it for other articles?
No, you don't need to do it. You can do it.
No worries.
Just as
So
an
I'd like to
educational- hang on
motion
one
to
second. Second.
restrict reconsideration of the article.
Yeah.
Second.
No, he can do it now because we moved the
I can
question.
do it
because
now.
the ballot was written.
Yep.
We just moved the question.
End of discussion. It'll go, if there's no more discussion here.
That's fine,
on
I'll
that,
let it go.
It's on the ballot as written.
Semantics at this
It's
point,
on the
but it's
ballot, yeah,
okay.
it's on the ballot as written at this
Semantics,
point.
it's fine.
I
So,
second
yes,
his motion.
you're seconding in his on the
Yes.
reconsideration? Yeah, so,
Perfect.
so we have a motion outstanding for no reconsideration of Article 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. No reconsideration of Article 6. We're done with Article 6. It'll be on the ballot.
Mr. Moderator, I would like us to
Coming back, yeah.
revisit Article 4, road bond.
Yeah.
Correct, thank you. It sounds like we've reached the point where we're ready to go back to that. Thank you so much.
All right. I would move to amend Article 4 to read, starting with, "and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment." When you get to that point, notes in their judgment, it being further understood that, and scratch out, "said bonding authority shall be on the condition that the selectmen shall not issue or negotiate bonds or notes for this appropriation in any given year for more than $1 million. And insert in that place, "payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date," so that it will read, "to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon and on other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment, it being further understood that payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date, it being contemplated," I didn't figure that one out, right? "It being contemplated that the overall," that will be a new sentence. So, "it being contemplated that the overall bonding authority, et cetera, will still be the same."
May I?
Yes, I'm
May I
waiting for
make
you
a
to
sort of
try
friendly suggestion there?
Yes.
That if you're making a new sentence, I don't think you need the "it being contemplated." I can just, that,
we
I
can
think you can
remove
drop
the "it
that.
being
and just start the new
complicated that."
sentence at "the
I agree.
overall bonding authority will not," et cetera.
Strike out
Back-
"it being contemplated that" as well. And then the new sentence starts with "the overall bonding."
Authority, and that's unchanged?
Correct. This is part of my amendment, because we haven't taken a vote on my amendment.
Right, we're only trying to get straight the
Yep.
text, and we just made a fix to that.
So would you like me to read it again?
I think I'm going to try to read it back, if that's fair, to see if we got it right up here.
Sure.
So, we are going to replace the section of text that says the following: "Said bonding authority shall be on the condition that the selectmen shall not issue or negotiate bonds or notes for this appropriation in any given year for more than $1 million," is going to be
Keep going.
taken out.
Keep
Well,
going.
we're also going to strike "it being contemplated that."
Correct.
We're going to strike all that text. We're going to replace that text with the phrase "payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date," and then there'll be a period, and then a new sentence will start, well, we're going to capitalize the T in "the." Is that,
That is
that's the
correct.
amendment?
Yep.
Right. So, that's the amendment. Do we have a second for that?
Second?
Wait,
We have a second, but wait might be a
Would
comment.
you
Go ahead.
like me to read it as it would read?
yes,
with the
because you added a change prior to your conference
So
over
let me
there,
try-
so
let
that's
me
where I
read
was
it
going
again.
with it.
Right.
So, "and to authorize," this is where I'm going to start, okay? "And to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine that the rate of interest thereon and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment, payment of the bond..."
No, "it being
Oh, no,
further
no,
understood
sorry.
that."
Let me do this again.
Yep.
"And to determine the rate of interest thereon and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment, it being further understood that payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date," end the sentence. Then it goes to "the overall bonding authority."
Correct. And keeps going.
Everything else in between is gone.
Right, no, you're missing your first part of the amendment where project completion date is
Oh, no,
2034.
that amendment was made and done. That's already in there after "will be completed by December 31, 2034. That amendment was made and
Voted on.
closed. That one was done.
Just for some clarity, because Roger,
It is done.
It's done.
Where is it?
The project, the
No,
purpose
where
of
do we
this.
put it on
we
this?
digest this.
It is.
Purpose is that the money cannot be used after 2033. However,
2034.
2034.
34, sorry, 2034. However, the payments can extend far beyond that so that it doesn't hurt the town if the highway department needs to pull money in 2032 and 3. The extension and payouts don't have to be shortened to 2034. We can bring it out to 2044 if needed.
I'm going to request.
That's the purpose
So
of
it does not take away any of the selectmen's abilities to negotiate the best terms for the town, which means the bond can be done for 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, doesn't matter. The selectman still has the authority by the voters to negotiate. What we are doing is just clarifying for the voters in this article that the payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date, so that they know the bond payment does not end when the project ends. That's what we're clarifying here. We are also cleaning up what seemed like contradictory terms here, where they may appropriate $5 million for a bond, but yet can only do bonds of no more than $1 million each year. So we've removed that out of there as well, so it's no longer muddy.
Right. Now, Ms. Gagne, I'm going to ask you to pause for a second, and I'm going to ask us to pause our discussion on the merits for a second, so I can make sure that my colleague, the clerk, who has to make this ballot with the exact text, I think she's got a question about the text.
I am going to require somebody to rewrite this in its entirety so I get it right. There's been way too much changing back and forth. I have a gazillion notes here. I need to get it right. If you're amending this article, I want it in its entirety.
I will give it to you in its entirety.
Thank you.
Right, and that's just procedurally, just so we have some at the end of the meeting kind of thing. We can get
Exactly, because
textually.
I have to rewrite it, so I will type it to make it clean and easy,
Yeah.
because I don't know that you can read my chicken scratches.
I think I have the actual text as well, but we'll just, that's, I don't want to spend, we don't have to go word by word here for the next 15 minutes just to make sure we have the text. We've got it, I think. So let's,
Selectman Conley?
we've got, yeah, Selectman Conley, I think you've got a comment. Ms. Gunn, stand by in case you
Stay
get.
there. So we're gonna find a way through this process to put pause. She'll write it.
No, I can write, no,
We're not
I
pausing
can,
now. We're gonna,
Joe needs it.
No, she has time to get it to me.
Does she?
no, the issue,
this is just getting it to her to put on the ballot, so it's
Right,
not phrased.
Your request?
No, Mr. Moderator, I just recommend that any proposed amendments to anything on this piece of paper be in writing, for the sake of the minute taker, for your clarity, and for Robin's clarity.
Well,
that,
technically, this is in writing.
well, yeah, let me just hold on for a minute. Mr. Amaro, that unfortunately is not how deliberative sessions work, because the amendment. Well, any town could vote to have any procedure they want. In most towns in New Hampshire, you'd be hard pressed to argue that you needed stuff in writing.
Well,
But anyway, we don't.
Just fair enough.
That's just how it works. So we do take a moment sometimes to make sure everybody's synced up, and I think our clerk's requirement or request is very straightforward, is that people be prepared
Want to do it?
that might, to help out in the textual production sense. So,
Lisa's on it right now.
right, we'll have that text clearly so that everyone can have it for their reference before the end of the day. If someone wants me to read, wants to put together that text, Mr. Connolly, and have us read it, we'll do that. So why don't we pause a moment, or on this one, we could switch back to another article if the voters would like to do that. Okay, so I'm going to just ask for a quick vote procedurally. Why don't we take a simple one out of order? I don't want to get on to a complicated one.
Seven.
We don't have any of those.
Let's take,
Seven.
no, let's take Article 8. because that's a super simple one, I think. If we may, if the voters, all in favor, can we take Article 8 out of order? While we're working on that one. Okay, Article 8 is going to come out of order. Anyone opposed to that? I didn't hear anybody opposed. Okay, let's go on to Article 8, temporarily. The Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund established in 2006. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. We're going to strike the second majority vote required because obviously it's not meant to be written twice. The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact. Bob, who wants to speak to it?
Jim, you want to touch base on this?
Number 8.
Number 8.
This is an annual request for the town building funds for repairs on all town buildings. The fund contains about $250,000 right now. The contemplation, I believe, was not only for large-scale maintenance requirements, that it could serve as a foundation for new facilities in the future. And if I misspoke, please correct me.
Any other comments on Article 8? Seeing there are none, Article 8 will be placed on the ballot as presented. However, the second instance of majority vote required, which looks like a typo or a cut and paste error, will be stricken.
Lisa,
Thank you.
could I make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 8?
You can?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, so there will be no reconsideration of Article 8. We never even got the final approval. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be deposited into the Police Cruisers and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund established in 2021. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required, and we're again going to strike the second majority vote required because we only need a majority vote required once at the town election. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact. Who would like to speak to Article 9? Mr. Burrow.
This is an article we've had in years past. Basically, it's appropriating money out of the the unexpended fund balance to put in this capital reserve. It can be used to do repairs on police cruisers and equipment, or it could be used to purchase new cruisers and equipment. It's been successful the last few years. Similar to what Jim was saying, it's put in there to take some of the pressure off the budget. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Doggett?
We've been putting $25,000 into this fund for a couple of years now. One of the questions that I have is $25,000 enough? Last year, we bought a cruiser that was $63,000 and change. At $25,000, we're not able to get a cruiser every other year. We're now, it basically takes 3 years to be able to get a cruiser. And Lord knows they don't make them like they used to. Therefore, I would propose to amend this to $35,000 as opposed to $25,000. That way, we're realistically looking at the intent for the capital reserve fund.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So the amendment Mr. Doggett proposed to Article 9 would be just to change the monetary sum from $25,000 to $35,000. So discussion on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. So Article 9 is amended so that the sum has been changed from $25,000 to $35,000.
And I would like to make a motion to restrict
Can't
reconsideration.
make it yet.
I'm getting confused,
He's
but go
jumping the
ahead.
gun. Okay, so
Go
it's
ahead.
been amended. So at this point, you could move the question.
I'd love to move the question.
But if you'd be.
We didn't move the last
You don't need
question,
to,
though.
but stick with me. I don't think, and I'm saying this in a friendly way, I doubt there's much discussion, but we probably want to hear it if it's there.
Okay.
So, do we have any other discussion, people who want to speak to or against, or just have questions about Article 9, the police cruiser and equipment capital reserve fund? Seeing there is no further discussion, this article will go onto the ballot as amended. And the two textual amendments for the benefit of the people who are keeping track of that stuff is the $25,000 has changed to $35,000, and the second majority vote required has been stricken.
I would move to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 9.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Okay. Because there was a change made, so we asked.
I'm seeing somebody still working on text, so why don't we move along to 10? Fire apparatus and equipment capital refurbishment capital reserve fund to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the fire apparatus and equipment refurbishment fund, capital reserve fund, established in 2005 and amended in 2011. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. A majority vote is required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact, and I hate to do this, but do we really mean to have fund in there twice? I think it's just the refurbishment capital reserve fund, not the refurbishment fund capital reserve fund. So I'm going to fix that as a typo. I'm just going to strike it, the first one, because I think it's a typo. So, discussion.
Yeah, I'll just say that everything I said about 9 is basically very similar about 10. The number's usually higher in this one because fire equipment is usually so much more. And the idea here is to take the pressure off as far as maintenance and also to provide money as we go forward to invest in new equipment down the road as necessary. So,
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion on Article 10? Seeing there is none, Article 10 will go on the ballot as presented with the one typographical correction. I'm guessing I'm going to get a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 10.
Second? We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. So Article 10 goes onto the ballot, as we've already said, will not be reconsidered. I'm going to keep going on the simple ones here, just to burn a roll. Let's go. Article 11, Highway Vehicle and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35, to be known as the Highway Vehicle and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, for the purpose of purchasing, maintaining, repairing, and improving or replacing the town's highway department vehicles and equipment, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the fund, and to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from such fund. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact.
Dan?
Sure.
Well, that's the selectman that just got that job.
Yeah, right. We have one for the police, we have one for the fire. This is setting one up for the highway department. The highway department currently has no equipment whatsoever. So we need to start building for the future, as we've been, if you haven't noticed, that's kind of our theme, we're building for the future. So we need to start somewhere in order to start purchasing equipment. Surrounding towns have their own highway departments where they have all their own equipment. There's only a select few that are still renting them. So that's the point of this, is to start building our own highway department in-house.
Yes.
Mary Reardon. The capital reserve fund, as the other two articles, does that need a vote of this body here today to
Establish it.
expend from, and the selectmen expend it, as opposed to the revolving fund, which is just,
Approval of the Board of Selectmen.
just on the request from the department, and the selectmen can spend that money. But is a capital reserve fund the kind of fund that needs to be voted on in order to expend money, is my question.
Well, the agents of a capital reserve are the selectmen, right? So the warrant articles are going to the legislative body, which is the voters, to take that money out of the general fund, right? I get those mixed up sometime, but the unexpended fund balance to go into the capital reserve funds, which then make the selectmen, or the selectmen are the agents, so the selectmen can then spend it throughout the year or whenever.
Without another vote?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So we have several here and several more to go that are taking it out of the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
So how much is in the unassigned fund balance?
2.3.
2.3 million.
$0.3 million, which is more than half of our annual budgets. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And we've stated it before that part of keeping the tax impact down is, that's why we're funding these warrants out of the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, any other comments or discussion on Article 11? Seeing there are none, Article 11 will go on the ballot as presented.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of number 11.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It will not be reconsidered.
Thank you.
So, I'm just trying to see if we are at a point in time where we're ready to go back. I don't see Ms. Gagne, which maybe she headed, there she is, sorry. Do we have a hard copy? What do you want to, do they have it? Or we have the-
Selectman Burrow has it? It's on Selectman Burrow's computer. He is emailing it to the town clerk.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, so great. So why don't we just,
If you want, you can read it from there.
we could. Why don't we wait a moment, let that process just continue, and go and do 12, because we got another simple one, right? We just kind of get one more out of the way. Okay, so Article 12, the Town Anniversary Revolving Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a revolving fund pursuant to RSA 35, which will be known as the Town Anniversary Revolving Fund, and raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be placed in this fund, the purpose of which shall be to support the celebration of the town's 275th anniversary and future anniversaries, and appoint the selectmen as agents to expend from the fund. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact.
Joe?
Yes. Several years ago, for the 250th anniversary, they started their procedure 3 years ahead of time, and by the time they were ready, they had approximately $30,000 in the fund. Unfortunately, we did not have that start this year, and we estimate currently that it would probably cost us for our celebration, the events we're planning, probably close to $40,000. So that's why we're asking the residents to please support this article from the unassigned fund balance.
Other comments, questions, or discussion regarding Article 12? Seeing there is none, Article 12 will go on the ballot as presented.
Could I make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 12?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. There will not be any reconsideration of Article 12. So,
Go back.
I want to go back now. Let's everybody comfortable with going back to Article 4. I think we have the text now. We're comfortable. Ray Jo, you got the text?
I can read it from here.
Why don't, just to save my voice a little bit,
Yeah.
Matt, can you just do us a favor, just read the text as it currently stands with amendments in?
Here we go. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5 million gross budget to reconstruct approximately 23 miles of roads deemed in need of reconstruction as more particularly identified on the 2024 proposed road construction list derived from the road management study of 2024, which list is dated January 26, 2024, and to authorize the issuance of bonds or notes thereof, I think is what you meant, Lisa? Of not,
It's therefore originally, yeah.
therefore of not more than $5 million in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and determine the rate of interest thereon and other conditions of the bonds or notes in their judgment. It being further understood that payment of the bond may exceed the project completion date. The overall bonding authority will not lapse until the project is completed, but that the project will be completed by December 31st, 2034 in annual increments, borrowing for which shall not exceed $1 million in any given year, and to take all other action relative thereto. This is a special article in accordance with RSA 32.
Period. Thank you. So, now we're back, well, that's a pending amendment, so.
Second.
I think we have a second already on that amendment. And we could entertain discussion on that amendment, if anyone has anything to say about that amendment at this point. I think we've been talking about it quite a bit. Anyone have any topics or discussion on the amendment? I'm not doing it. Okay, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
The opposed? Okay, it passes. So, do we have any further discussion?
I would like to motion to amend more for the sake of discussion than anything to remove this article has an estimated tax impact. I feel like it's a, huh?
Right, yeah, I was going to say, hang on a second there, Dan. But we have a requirement, I don't think we can do that.
We need to vote to have it or not, right? So at some point in time, the town voted to have the tax impact on the ballot?
On all the ballot, right.
On all warrants.
Right. So you would need a warrant article in front of the voters. In other words, you can't take it off this year. You could put a warrant article in next year to say we're not going to do it prospectively in the future, but we can't undo it here.
Let's withdraw it.
Can you put a range? Yeah, I'm looking at you. Because I'm just saying, it's such a moving target.
I'm just trying to expedite things. I think barring, an apoplectic fit from the town's council, that we can present the range.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, you would kind of have to, because you don't know what the exact.
Exactly.
You can't, right.
You don't know what the rates.
You can't.
Usually 18.
It's right, and that was.
You can't.
And that was the spirit of it. It's a moving target.
Right.
We can't nail it down.
We all shouldn't be talking back and forth at once, but I think we all have the same objective, which is to move this along. And I will just say, sort of jumping in as the moderator, perhaps, that there are other instances where people have needed to give like a tax impact range because something is happening that you don't know what it's going to cost exactly, right? Because you could vote to close the special dump and say, we don't know exactly what it's going to cost because we're going to find what's in the ground as we do it. So it's not unreasonable to present a range, and that range is an estimate. So I would hope that the person who's doing that range does their best job based on what we know now of saying, okay, it's going to be between A and B, but it doesn't have to be perfect because nobody could ever be,
Made that friendly, whatever you called it, for the town admin.
Correct. The voters did. The voters have already kind of suggested that the town, the selectmen, the town administrator would do their best to get that estimated range. So I think that's kind of how we have to leave it. Dan, we can't remove it. Any other thoughts or discussion on that topic?
Room for another one?
I would just add that we talked about it earlier, but there will be a voter's guide. So I'll do another commercial for the voter's guide. This will be available online. You can pick one up in the town hall. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. If they have questions about things like this, there will be more explanation.
Okay. Any further discussion, comments, questions, or amendments regarding Article 4? Seeing there are none, Article 4 will go on the ballot as amended.
Could I please make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 4?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we will not reconsider Article 4.
Did I go to 5?
Okay, we're on to Article 5, the operating budget. Now I'm giving everybody a chance to flip the page here. We're on to the second page. All right. Shall the town of Newton raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,519,182. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,411,588, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Newton or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required. The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. The proposed operating budget has an estimated tax impact of $1.55. The default budget has an estimated tax impact of 40 cents.
That's 55 cents, not $1.55.
Yeah, my apologies if I misread that. It's 55 cents or $1.55.
Right.
My
Difference being 15 cents between the proposed and the default.
Correct. So, comments on the article?
Jim, would you like to speak on this? You spent an awful lot of time doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This budget represents three priorities: our employees, public safety, and infrastructure. All of them are essential. I've said before at selectmen's meetings, Newton, me too, we're not an attractive employer. We have people leaving our ranks, going to surrounding communities, making on average $4 an hour more. This operating budget contains about a 5% increase for all employees, full-time and part-time. And it's upfront and outfront because they are our most valuable resource. Without our employees, we don't function. And as far as public safety goes, we have a transition going on at the PD. We have a fire department that can boast the most paramedics in the area are on staff. And the infrastructure, as Mr. Bavera already said, is crumbling around us. And we need to start paying more attention to it because the longer you wait, the more it costs. So those are the three themes, I guess I would share with you, that were the foundation of building this budget. The Board of Selectmen did ask all of the department heads, tell us what you need for funding, and then we'll have a discussion. Don't come in lowballing it because you're afraid it's going to get cut more or we're not going to be considerate of what your needs are. And so what you have before you now is a difference between the default budget and the operating budget of approximately $107,595. I believe it's 2.38%. That's kind of historic for most towns. It's really narrow, and that just goes to show you that the board and the department heads have done a wonderful job of presenting needs, not wants. And I think we have a slide. You could see that $3.63 is down 10 cents from the prior year. That's our tax rate. Next slide, please. Here's the distribution of your tax bill. The return address is 2 Town Hall Road. The majority of the expense associated with your tax rate is 73.9% schools, 15% us, the town, 7.7% state ed, and 3.4% what we send over to the county. I don't think it's a fair distribution, but it's close to what the norm is around us. The schools obviously are consuming the majority or most of your tax dollar. And again, it's not a criticism. I don't know schools. I don't know what it takes. But 15% of your tax bill to make this town work, it's not a big ask. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Anyone else want to discuss, question, amend the operating budget Article 5?
I know you guys are dreading me up here. I just want to say that the estimated tax impact between proposed and default is a difference of 15 cents. I want people to hear this in perspective. To fund the departments, the Board of Selectmen is asking for the voters to approve approximately a $75 a year increase in their taxes for a $500,000 home. That's $75, $37.50 for each tax payment. At a $500,000 home, that is not a large increase to operate this town.
Assessed value is a little lower than 500.
But this, I'm going high, so people, okay, people pay 250. We don't have 250 homes here. So if you look at it, 500, you're looking at most people under $75 for the year to do this operating budget proposed. That's all.
Thank you. Other comments, discussion regarding the operating budget, Article 5?
The only thing I'd like to add is perspective. I've been on the board for 10 years. This is the most intensive review I've ever seen of the operating budget, given what happened last year. The board, and more importantly, the department heads, took it as a mandate. They had to dive deep into this budget. This is an example of a realistic budget. They're still going to go without some stuff. That's just the way it works, to put a budget out there. But, you know, I commend the town admin, I commend the department heads and the board members for really, you know, burning the midnight oil to go over this budget. If you've been following along in all our meetings, we started in one place and we really travel. It's been a journey to get here, and I appreciate the treasurer pointed out what it actually equates to for the average person. So I hope we put it out there for the voters, and it is successful this year. It's very important that we do not do default budgets two years in a row. So,
And again, to piggyback on what Matt was talking about, there's been a lot of comment out there about why haven't we been able to lower the tax impact. And as you're seeing in what's been stated, the budget, 15 cents. And why is that? That is because all these warrant articles are being funded, or basically I'd say 98% of them, from the unassigned fund balance, which is why that impact is where it is. Otherwise, that impact would have increased because some of these warrant articles would have had a tax impact in the budget. So that's why we use the money towards the warrants, and we kept the budget separate so that we could get a proper operating budget so that every department head, there'd be no fluff, and we're at where we're at. And we took it so now it's a realistic budget, and we know where we stand.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion regarding Article?
He left.
Yeah, if I can.
Yes.
If I can we do a math check? Because I think it's actually lower. The difference between the tax impact. I don't know if when they were last calculated, if the numbers were changed and then it wasn't adjusted, but we have another warrant article that's substantial, and the impact's like 8 cents. And it's more than the difference between these two. So, I mean, I guess it's just can we just double check it before we go to ballot and like leave it up to the TA? I'm just not sure of it.
The tax impact is any increase over the previous year. So that to $4 million?
No, I'm talking
Whatever-
between the two.
Yes, between 55 and 40? Well, the difference between the amounts, it's only 130.
Right, I don't think it represents a 15-cent difference. That's what I
Possible.
mean. That's what I'm talking about.
Closer?
Yes, I think it's less than 15 cents.
I believe I
don't
have
know
a
about
mandate
that.
from the moderator to do ranges. And I will be happy to do that.
I mean,
in
for
the
instance, we have an article that's 233,000 and the impact is 3 cents. So that delta between those two,
Just so you know, I had calculated what the tax impact would be on 100,000, 50,000, et cetera. 100,000 was approximately 154.
Okay.
So the 15 cent, it's 100 and something, it's really close. Maybe you're talking 16
maybe the other one's
cents.
wrong. Maybe the other one's wrong.
But the point is, it's in the ballpark.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so let me just address that briefly. The actual warrant and the actual article is the article. Our ballots, both by town vote and by law, or enabling law, may include other statements, including what the Board of Selectmen voted and these estimated tax impacts. But those are kind of determined in the ballot preparation process by, I mean, legally, the Board of Selectmen has the responsibility. Mr. O'Mara, I think, is the guy who's actually working on it. So basically, I'm just going to repeat the previous thing, which is make sure the clerk has the best accurate estimates you can make in time to get that ballot printed.
Will do.
And that number, if there needs to be an adjustment, I mean, it's possible there was a mathematical error somewhere in here or something, but somebody should just kind of double check all those and put them on the ballot. So, seeing no further discussion, well, let me just ask, any further discussion, amendments, or questions regarding Article 5, the operating budget? Seeing none, Article 5 will go on the ballot as presented.
Mr. Moderator, could I please make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5?
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We will not reconsider Article 5. Okay, so we went kind of out of order. The next one that's kind of in order from 5 is 7. So let's move to 7. So I'm going to read it and we'll get to work on 7. 7, lease of town-owned land. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey an easement, license, or leasehold interest on a portion of the property owned by the town of Newton located behind the transfer station. It's kind of, excuse me, there probably should be a period there, but we'll deal with that. Access will be from Maple Ave, identified as tax map 10, lot 7-5-1, for a period not to exceed 20 years for the purposes of constructing, installing, and operating a communications tower in such dimensions and under such terms and consideration as the Board of Selectmen in its discretion deems suitable, and to further authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute such related contracts and agreements related to such communications tower. Such authority shall not lapse and shall remain effective until December 31st, 2025. Majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact.
So anybody that's been paying attention to some of our town meetings, and I know that as Matt always talks about our millions of viewers that sit out there on TV land when we have our meetings, would know that the town suffers from a lot of dead spots. Within it, the fire, police, our 911 people have a hard time with communications when they get into those dead spots. So that became a great deal of concern with us. So we started to explore possibilities of trying to correct that situation. And one of the proposals that came up was being able to put one of these cell towers in place. The location that is listed in this is behind the town transfer station, out of sight, out of mind. The height is limited to, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it wouldn't be seen. There'll be, I believe it was possibly 3 tiers to what the 2 companies that came in and proposed their their propositions to us about what they would do. This would, one, it would improve that 911 communication between our fire and our police forces. Two, it would also help the townspeople with their cell phone reception and their computers in all that area and the dead spots. And three, it would become a revenue source to the town because those repeaters would, the companies that would put some of their repeaters on it, whether it would be AT&T or whatever it is, that would be paying to the company, we would receive a portion of that towards the town. And if I remember correctly, somewhere in the vicinity of over $20,000 to $30,000 is possible per year for the town to receive revenue from those towers. And that is depending upon how many contractors that they get to put on the cell towers. If they put more, the town could appropriate more money from that. It depends on which company that we go with, that we will bring them both in. But the problem is, it costs a lot of money to put the cell tower up, equipment-wise, personnel-wise, all that said and done. That is the reason why we're looking for a 20-year appropriation for this, so that when the companies look at it, they know that they have at least 20 years, that they're going to get more than the money that they're putting up front to install these cell towers, and that it becomes worth their while. And again, it definitely will be worth the while of the town for the three reasons that I stated.
And just to be clear, the appropriation is not our appropriation.
Right.
The reason it's on the warrant is it's any lease over 1 year has to go to the legislative body, and that's why it's there. So.
Discussion, and I'm going to just, you can go first, but I'm going to ask us that we will cooperatively make a language fix, which just shuffles the sentence around, because we want to, Ms. Gunn, do you want to just tackle that? Can we just tackle that one first?
Go for it.
Yeah. I think, when I read it, you heard me grind to a halt trying to read it. I think every voter that comes in is going to go, huh? So I am going to suggest, or propose as an amendment, to someone to adopt here, that we take the phrase "access will be from Maple Avenue" and move it to after identified as tax map 10, lot 7-5-1, and add the word "with" in front of it. So the sentence would now read, the property owned by the town of Newton located behind the transfer station identified as tax map 10, lot 7-5-1, comma, with access from Maple Avenue. Second?
Second.
I don't think I need to speak to why. It just makes the sentence read better. Do we have any other discussion on that amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, now, so that amendment will happen, I think. Tony, you got that? I got it. For you as well. Okay, so Ms. Gunn, you're back to where you were going with the more substantive aspect of discussion about the article.
It's not an amendment. I just want to mention that I did take a look at the property that is in question. It is called Maple Ave. And the road access is literally just like road width off of Maple Ave onto that property. There are one piece of property on either side of it that are approximately half an acre with homes on them. 13 acres of land that cannot be built because you only have that road access, no frontage, zero, which means it's dead space. The only thing the town could potentially do with this property would be to expand transfer station further back. That would be it. So this at least gives this parcel some purpose and revenue. The only thing I would like to say is I recommend highly to the board that once they make that recommendation, they also, or once they enter into that lease agreement for 20 years, if it happens, the next thing they need to do is put a warrant article on the following ballot that says where that rental or lease income is going to go, whether it's a new warrant article or somewhere else. We do not want to see it left buried in the unencumbered fund balance.
So that is correct. We've thought about that lease, we just haven't come up with the place that we felt it should go yet. Plus, we wanted to see what revenues would be coming in, so that we would know with a certain amount of revenues where it would be better placed than somewhere else if it was less.
Mr. Doggett.
Jim Doggett. First, there's a Scrivener's error. It should be tax map 10, block 7, lot 5-1.
Okay, so why, let's just fix that.
Okay, yeah.
And then if you have more to say, do we have any other like errors like that to fix? Text errors? I mean,
That's just a typo, right?
right, I'm going to go fix that one unless you have more of the same level.
No. I have one further question concerning.
Right,
the
so
whole
let's
thing.
just stand there for a second. Mr. Doggett, just correcting the sort of typographical presentation of the lot number, so it's got a block number, so it'd be block 7, lot 5-1. Can somebody second that amendment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Fine, so we fixed the text. All right, go ahead, Mr. Doggett.
My next question is that there is running water that must cross that roadway. Who is going to be responsible for the engineering, the wetlands crossing, and what have you? Is it going to be the town or whomever?
Contractor.
The cell phone tower people are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance. They've already said that when they talked to us.
Yeah, and they will be getting all necessary
Upkeep and
permits as well.
maintenance, but who is going to be responsible for the construction
They
of the
are.
roadway?
They will, and
They will. They're taking care of everything.
I just want that
There's-
on the
yep,
record.
on the record, the town will pay nothing,
Okay.
zero, to having this done.
And
The
they-
company that we choose is paying for everything.
And
That
they-
is why the 20-year,
And they will go through the normal planning board
Right.
process.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other discussion, comments, questions, amendments regarding Article 7? Yes, sir.
If this technology gets outdated.
Could we have
let's
your
say
name, please?
I'm sorry?
Oh, yes, sir, just if you could state your name for the people out there.
My name's Doc Mackey, I live in Bear Hill Road.
Thank you.
If this technology gets outdated in 20 years, let's say we go to satellites, will the company that hasn't done the installation remove their equipment and return the
Yes.
site back
They have to
to
decommission.
the original condition?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion regarding Article 7? Seeing there is none, Article 7 will go on the ballot with its two kind of typographical amendments.
Can I make a
I'm
motion?
guessing there's going to be a motion, yeah.
Can I make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7?
Do we have a second?
Second that. So
All in
moved.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Onwards. It's always fun to turn the page, and for me at least, and see some check marks, because that's... All right, we're off to, I think, on to 13 at this point. So Article 13, Cyclical Revaluation Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35 to be known as the Cyclical Revaluation Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of funding the 5-year property valuation pursuant to New Hampshire RSA 75:8A, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the fund, and to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from such fund. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, majority vote required, and this article has no tax impact.
Jim?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. O'Mara, would you like to speak to that?
If I may.
I think it just got handed to you, so.
The New Hampshire RSA requires a cyclical reval townwide every 5 years. And if we were to not create this capital reserve, there'd be a $100,000 spike in the given 5th year that we're required to do that. We're already 2 years into it, which is why this amount is $50,000. But the goal of the board was to do $20,000 over 5 years to get to the 100,000, which is the approximated cost of doing the reval.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Anyone, questions, comments, discussion? Seeing there is none, Article 13 will be placed on the ballot as presented.
Matt, you want to make a motion?
Oh, sorry. How quickly I forget. I would like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13.
Second. He's at the
All in
bathroom.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the ayes carry. We won't reconsider it. And let me just make it clear here. It's been a long morning already for me. I got up pretty early, so I'm certainly not indicating that anyone should or shouldn't, for instance, put forth a motion from the floor for any purpose, and certainly not whether or not to ban reconsideration. But I kind of thought that Mr. Burrell might have just momentarily lost the thread, and I knew he was going to say it, so I just thought I'd kind of wave at him.
Fair enough.
Article 14, Highway Construction Revolving Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be deposited into the Highway Construction Revolving Fund. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund account, majority vote required, and this article contains a note that this article is contingent upon town meeting's approval of Article 4. And if the town meeting approves Article 4, then this article shall be null and void. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact. Who wants to speak to that?
You up, Dan.
Guy.
So this is our just in case. So our hope is that if people don't support Article 4, that they'll at least support this in order, for the same reasons why we need Article 4, is to try to get our roads straightened out and get fixed. This is a lot less money than what it should be, but it's what we felt was agreeable for the town. But if Article 4 passes, this whole article is null and void. We don't keep needing the money. We're trying to get our roads straightened out, and that's why you guys are seeing the budgets and the warrant articles littered with this stuff, because we've heard your complaints and we're trying to fix it. So we're pretty much trying to take every angle we possibly can to try to fix our roads. This is our Band-Aid.
Thank you. Ms. Gagne.
All right, since this is being taken from the unassigned balance, may I ask why you opted to decrease the original proposed amount from 250,000 down to 100,000?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Lisa, the $100,000 reflects a consideration of the board to keep in mind that the fund balance needs to exist, not be depleted. And I know that's a concern of yours. But having said that, the $100,000 also appears in the road bond. If that passes, this will not take place.
Correct, but if it doesn't pass, that means he's limited to $100,000. That's why I was asking.
But the dollar value is capped at 100,000. The
Yes.
scope of the work that can be done can be combined with operating budget, highway block grants, and this money.
My point is, if Article 4 fails, let's say, argument's sake, it fails, all we're giving him is, and this one passes, all he's getting is $100,000 coming out of the unencumbered fund balance.
Yeah.
So I would like, and because it becomes null and void if Article 4 passes, I do think that it should be, I'm going to move to amend the sum to be $200,000.
Second.
Okay, so we have an amendment to increase the monetary amount from $100,000 to $200,000 from Ms. Gagne. It's been seconded. Discussion on the merits of that amendment. Questions, comments? Seeing there's no additional discussion, we're going to, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So the amendment carries.
Okay. And I do have something regarding the verbiage of the contingent on, but I couldn't find it in the 20 or 21 town report, so I want to look for it after.
Okay, do you have?
I have to look at the 20,
Okay,
22 town.
let me just jump in if I may, and I'm going to point at our town council, and he hates that when that happens. Sorry, Chris. Are you familiar with the contingency sentence? Because this contingent sentence, when I read it, I'm thinking, is that the right one?
It's not, and we have it in prior years, and that's why I wanted to go look for one.
Right, so can we, unless you know off the top of your head that that's not a problem,
I don't know that it's a problem. I mean, if I was a scrivener, I'd write it a little bit
Differently. Exactly.
It's contingent upon the approval of Article 4. Well, that doesn't make a ton of sense. It's contingent on your disapproval.
right, so can we,
that
Can I
can we
just-
temporarily, how long are you gonna take to look it up? Because,
I'm gonna go to the town reports.
okay, let me just make an explanation. We may wanna move our discussion along, but this is one of those sentences that's probably got a statutorily mandated form, which we may not exactly have right, or it's gonna be close to it. It's in previous town reports. It's well worth our time and effort to go look at the one in the previous report and not end up with somebody, suing the town because we didn't put that phrasing in right.
Yeah, because it's misleading, and I just
Well,
wanted to be
whatever,
clear.
yeah, I'm not characterizing.
We'll
I'm
give you
just saying-
10 minutes.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes, okay? So, for purposes of that, I'm going to need a very quick vote to pause discussion on Article 14. So, can somebody just give us a quick motion there?
I'll make a motion to pause our discussion on Article 14 by 10 minutes.
Second on that?
Yep, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so we're just going to hold that, let them fix that, and then why don't we use our time to step forward? Is a good choice 15? That sounds
No,
like pretty...
it's got the same sentence, so.
Okay, let's skip, no, 15 does not have that
Yes, it
sentence.
does.
Where?
Oh, 15. 15 doesn't, that's yours.
15,
How's
yeah.
that?
Okay, so, Article 15. Let's work on Article 15. To see if the town will vote to approve pursuant to the provisions of RSA 41:25, in lieu of base salary and fees, to change the compensation of the town clerk and tax collector to a salary basis only, with all fees collected being returned to the town, and to authorize the select board to make subsequent adjustments to the town clerk and tax collector's salary on an annual basis to be effective immediately following March 2024 elections, majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact.
Two up MJ.
I was going to say, I expect perhaps our clerk has the most relevant thing to say about that.
I'm going to explain this the easiest way I can. Town clerk, tax collector, I make a very small salary, and then I am compensated by the fees depending on what work I do for the day. Whatever I sell, I get a fee. This is very archaic. I am like one of the only clerks left in the state that's paid this way. It needs to be changed because of this, because I do not have a structured salary or wage that is the same thing every week. I was not entitled to New Hampshire retirement. So I've been working for 20 years without New Hampshire retirement. My successor will not take this job for that. If you're working for the town and the state, you should be compensated in a way where you do have retirement. So this needs to be changed. And it's not a raise, it's just taking the fees that were collected, giving them to the town, and the town will turn around and instead of me every week saying, I got $2 for this dog, $5 for that car, they're just gonna pay me. They're gonna take the fees, roll it into my salary, and pay me a set wage every week. That would, we don't want to get into that.
Okay, so,
That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, MJ.
You're welcome.
questions or discussion? Mr. O'Mara?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. From an accounting perspective, it's much cleaner.
Yes.
It's money that's coming in that you're not going to touch. Revenues should never be mixed with expenses. They have to be separate. There's a firewall between them two, if you will. This creates a much cleaner document balance sheet for the town. That money coming in stays in, and you're paying out a salary. And I think it's revenue neutral, they would call it, because it's the same amount of fees for the salary.
Sure.
Other comments, questions, discussion, or amendments regarding Article 15?
I'd just like to add that moving this way will, as we go towards the future, make it more attractive to hire talent that would want to come for that type of salary. As MJ said, it's a little archaic, and we need to bring that, especially that position, into the correct times right now. And I'll leave it there.
Any other comments or discussion on Article 15? Seeing there are none, it'll go on the ballot as presented.
Could I please motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 15?
A second on that?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. We will not reconsider Article 15. Okay, so I'm guessing that we're ready to roll on 14.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would move to amend Article 14, so that it reads, this article is a contingent upon, strike out, town meeting's approval of. Article 4, colon, strike out and, so that it will read, this article is contingent upon Article 4, colon, if the town meeting approves Article 4, then this article shall be null and void.
One more
Thank you.
time.
That sounds like the right, that's the word, that's the traditional wording that's
Again?
used. Okay, thank you. So,
Read it again, please.
This article is contingent upon Article 4, colon. If the town meeting approves Article 4, then this article shall be null and void.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you, Lisa.
that's, okay, good. So that's familiar sounding text. Town council, that's, you've probably heard that one before too. Yeah. That's,
Second.
we got a second on it. Any discussion on that amendment? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, there's no nays. It's been appended. Now, I'm going to ask everyone here for another quick vote. If we have, Mr. Guy, don't we have that same verbiage
In 16.
16.
in 16? So
We can do that when we get to it.
Yeah,
we'll
let's
do it when we get to it,
it.
but let's just hold that text in our minds, okay? So, any further discussion on Article 14? Any questions, amendments? Seeing there is none,
Mr.
Article
Moderator?
14 will go on the ballot as,
Mr. Moderator?
oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
I'd like
Smollett.
to put a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 14.
You gotta wait
No, we
till
haven't
he's
got there
done,
yet.
Joe.
Oh, we haven't?
I'm just-
Oh, I thought we did.
Joe, work your side of the street. Joe. That's his mind over here.
Okay, so
Threw everybody off.
I thought we were moving along. We're doing such a good time.
we're
moving
doing
along.
fine. But, okay, so Article 14, we don't have any more discussion. It'll go on the ballot as amended.
Could I please make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 14?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed?
Glad to be on track.
All right, we're not coming back to 14, thank you. All right. 16, social service agencies. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,363, $30,363 spelled out as numerically, for the social service agencies listed below, said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. And then I'm just going to read them off. The list is Area Home Care and Family Services, $3,800. Child Advocacy Center, $2,000. Drugs Are Dangerous, $2,500. Haven, $3,050. SPCA, $750. Rockingham County Community Action, $5,000. Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels, $2,927. Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels Transportation, $700. The SOROC Coalition for Healthy Use, $4,936. The Vic Geary Center, $2,700, and Waypoint for $2,000. That adds up to the $30,363. This article is contingent, this has the same wording as before. This article is contingent upon the town meeting's approval of Article 5, proposed 2024 operating budget, and if the town meeting approves Article 5, this article shall be null and void. And then it says, Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has an estimated tax impact of .047, which would be a little under a nickel. I'm guessing the first thing we ought to do is do the simple edit about,
Lisa's going to make that motion.
yeah, I'm
right?
guessing, I'm looking right at it.
Well, I have the amendment for the contingent.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. I was hoping that would happen.
I move to amend Article 16 to strike out, after this article is contingent upon, the words, "the town meeting's approval of." Keep Article 5, strike out parentheses, proposed 24 operating budget, end parentheses, there's no parenthesis, and the word "and." Insert, after Article 5, a colon, and then keep the rest of it, so that it will read, "This article is contingent upon Article 5, colon. If the town meeting approves Article 5, this article shall be null and void."
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The amendment carries, so we're fixing that sentence there. Thank you. Onwards from there.
And Joe, you want to talk about this one?
Hang on one second, just Ms. Gunn, do you have any further?
No amendments, I just wanted to talk about this one.
Okay, so,
Or do you want me to?
well, you're standing there, why don't you make your comment and then we'll work our way through the rest of it.
I do want to point out to the voters that this is the exact same amount of money that we approved last year. There is no increase in the amount of funds. And the tax impact 047, we already had that impact last year. The only thing that would happen if you voted no is that there could potentially be a tax decrease if they use the unassigned fund balance to drop it down. But you're not going to see a tax increase per se from what you paid in taxes on this particular article last year. So, well worth it. Services we are required to provide and pay for. Let's approve.
So the only thing I'll say, jumping off of that, is, as Lisa said, you know, we've had this for years. Some people have always said, why do you keep having the same warrant article year after year? It's obviously important. If you've been following along in the meetings, what we finally got direction on was we needed to put it in one more time with this sort of contingent language in there. And then this will, if it's successful, likely be the last time you see this article, and it'll be part of the default budget, right? So,
Jim?
Mr. Romero.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. Just a point of clarification. You have a budget detail sheets in front of you. This exact dollar value appears in the welfare budget, and that's where it's going to stay going forward. The process, or the thought process to this was, you ask the same question for the same dollars every year. Let's keep the warrant smaller and simpler so people don't get exhausted after Article 5 and just write no for the rest of them. That being said, these are all social services. They do a lot of work through the PD and through welfare, and they're very important to a number of our residents in this town. So what I would encourage not only support for this article, but go back to the operating budget. Say yes to that, and the only time you'll see another question related to social services is if one drops off or a new one is added. So you'll be voting on the change.
Thank you. Mr. Doggett.
Actually, I have two comments. One is, in order to do what the selectmen would like to do, shouldn't this have some sort of at least a parenthetical that says, in the future, these will be moved into the budget? Because if Article 5 fails, if that language were somehow in here, that would allow it to automatically roll into the budget as opposed to having to be a warrant article every year.
it already does, right?
Let me just hold on that for a second. If I may, give me a moment. Be careful, because that suggests that this warrant then becomes, as part of its content, making that decision.
Right, you're not giving the
Right,
decision.
so I'm not sure you want to say anything about that in this one.
Okay, I just, it came to mind when looking
Yeah.
at this.
It's pretty cut and dry the way it is. Approve the budget, it's in there and it stays there. If you don't approve the budget, then it'll continue to be a warrant article.
Okay. And the other question I have, because we're working on the age-friendly community, which is funded by a grant. We're paying into the Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels transportation program, and we are not receiving services. That's, RPC said that Newton is not on the list. So we're sending them $700 to fund transportation in a different town. So I would definitely check in on that, because I know that the county community action program, which covers Meals on Wheels and a couple of other items such as the transportation, they automatically just sort of blanket apportion their costs across the county, and they send the, every town gets a bill for the 3 programs that they run, whether or not we get any service or not for the price. And right at the moment, one of the major concerns in the town of Newton for those people that are 65 and older is the fact that there is no publicly accessible transportation, and there is the plan that used to be provided by Lamprey Healthcare, which I notice is no longer on the list. They used to provide a once-a-week bus for seniors to be able to utilize for, mostly it was for grocery shopping, and they would hit a couple of different stores each week, and there was a sort of a schedule of how that was done. That disappeared, and now if you're over the age 65 and you have no transportation, you have to rely on the kindness of strangers and family.
Well, that sounds like an administrative situation that we would have to address, so that really doesn't have anything, from what I can see, to deal with putting this on the budget. It is something that the select board and the town administrator would have to look into afterwards, so that we can make sure that those services are
I'll
getting
bring it
taken
up
care of.
because Thursday was the meeting where it came out.
Yep.
And this is the first time I've had to address it. It just, as a taxpayer, $700 isn't an awful lot of money, but if we're just being billed automatically because it's our Newton's portion of their budget and we're not receiving services, we should reconsider it.
Thank you.
We should
Ms. Reardon.
definitely take that in the minutes, right? That we can look into that.
Okay, this warrant article says said funds to come from unassigned fund balance. So I make a motion that we remove the last sentence of this article that says this article has an estimated tax impact of 40.047 cents.
Oh.
So I think the reasoning that we had that was because this is slightly different than the other ones, in that we actually do have it in the budget,
Operating budget, 2020.
but it's contingent.
Yep.
So that's why that language is in there and not in the others.
But if I may say, I think Ms. Reardon is right.
Well, I'm gonna,
In that every instance where, due to DRA regulations, every instance where it's funded out of the balance, the unassigned balance, there's no tax impact. The tax impact doesn't belong here. That tax impact already appears in the 55 cents of the budget because it's in the budget.
You're right.
so
So I think,
Thank you.
I think,
I want.
we don't need a second because it's not an amendment, because it's the tax impact statement. And Mr. Romero, when you calculate the tax impact statements, I think you need to fix that one. Mr. Guy.
I'd like to make a motion to just remove funds to come from the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, different concepts. Do we have a second on that?
I made an amendment, and did somebody second?
That's, okay, let me explain that. Ms. Ritton, that's not, the sentence that states the tax impact is not a part of the body of the warrant. It's the same way that the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends that. There's statements that appear on the ballot, and in this case, because the taxpayers said that they would appear there. But that statement, you're correct, but it's not, like, we don't amend it here. In other words, we are simply instructing the sort of administrative process to put the right number in there. In the same way, if we questioned what the Board of Selectmen said, right? In other words, we can't say, you know what, we're going to amend it and make the Board of Selectmen line say that they recommend a no vote, because it's not part of the article, right? They're not voting on that statement that it has an estimated tax impact. So as a deliberative body, we're not voting on that one way or another. It's supposed to be there on the ballot, and we certainly can instruct, as we did by our vote earlier, the town administrator, you know, that process to get it right. And you're correct, they got it wrong. But we're not formally amending it, so it doesn't need a second, for instance. You see what I mean? You're right, but as soon as you point that out, they need to fix it. Does that make sense? Because it's probably very confusing to the people watching this at home.
It's confusing to me.
It's confusing to, yeah, we're all confused.
They've
already
But anyway, it's a kind of an arcane bit of what the parts on the ballot, you know, what we actually work on as what are you actually voting on? I mean, you're not voting on what the selectmen said, right? You're only voting on the warrant. You're not voting on the estimated tax impact. You're voting on the article. Okay, so, Mr. Guy, does that covers your?
Kind of.
Sort of?
I was looking for histories to see, not histories, past selectmen's meetings to see if we had even put that on there, or if it was not to the TA's fault, but if he was just adding that unassigned funds balance.
I'm just going to say, let's just fix the number.
I don't remember.
Because in this case, in this article, it's zero, because if it's coming out of the fund balance, by DRA regulation, it's zero as a tax income.
We did.
We'll just fix it.
May I just point out that all of these agencies are required to supply letters indicating how many residents of Newton they are supporting and helping. And if I see a zero in a letter, the check won't leave town.
Chair.
Fair enough.
And I just want to clarify, since the article itself does say coming from unassigned fund balance, it's just a clerical change for the ballot. No amendments, no corrections, just a clerical correction before it goes on the ballot to say this article has no tax impact. That's all.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we have any further discussion on that Article 16 as a whole? Yes, Mr. Ham.
Mr. Guide made a motion to make an amendment. I don't know if he wants to withdraw that or not.
Yeah, I'll withdraw, it's fine.
Right, but also, again, as we
He
were
didn't accept
discussing.
it.
No, he was making a substantive amendment. He was going
But he
to
didn't
not
ma-
have it come from the assigned fund balance.
No, I don't think so.
That's what he said.
It never came out. Nope. It was coming, but it didn't fully come out.
Okay, my understanding was you wanted to amend the tax impact, but do you actually want to amend the article?
No, just,
Okay.
He's removing it.
What he was requesting would have been an amendment to the article.
yes.
But it sounds like he is stepping back and choosing
Fine.
not to make
Okay,
an
good.
amendment.
Let's move on.
Okay. My apologies if I misunderstood you,
move
Mr.
on.
Guy. Okay, so, any further discussion on Article 16? Seeing there is none, Article 16 will go on the ballot with the amendment that was approved for the contingency line.
I move to restrict reconsideration.
Hey, come on.
Oh, I
got a
can't do
second?
that. That's his
There we
job.
go.
What am I even here for this morning?
His job.
Copy and paste for me, Matt Joe.
That's his last
Now
hurrah.
somebody else is in the mix.
Stop it, it's Matt and Joe.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So we're on to Article 17, the Fire and Rescue Ambulance Program Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35 to be known as the Fire and Rescue Ambulance Program Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of employee wages, training, and purchasing and maintaining the necessary equipment to provide around-the-clock fire and ambulance services to the town, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $233,720 to be placed in the fund, and to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from such fund. Majority vote required. Board of Selectmen recommends this article by a vote of 5-0. This article has an estimated tax impact of $0.036 or 3.6 cents, a little under 4 cents. Who would like to speak to it?
I'm going to speak on behalf of this. So myself and the town administrator, Jim O'Mara, we sat in some meetings with Plastow, Danville, Hampstead, Sandown, and Atkinson. What has taken place in the past was it was a family-owned business that owned the ambulance service, which is now called Trinity. They sold the company. That is why it is now Trinity. The entity that owns it is looking to make money off of this deal. So we went from having a free backup ambulance service to the town to now they want to recoup not only the money that they get paid in transports, but they want to get a contractual agreement, which we agreed to for the 1 year, as backup for the town. Anybody that watched WMUR the other night, it was the beginning of this week, a 2-year-old child died because the response time for ambulance service was 20 minutes or longer in the town of Winthrop, New Hampshire.
Yes.
And that bothers me.
It was Mass. It was down in Mass.
Was it Mass? I thought it was New Hampshire.
Do you need a minute
But
or?
the issue that we keep talking about with this town is our 911 service and the people that we have set in place. And I've said this before, that we need to have people put in place. We have to have proper equipment, proper tools to do the job. The people of this town deserve nothing less than to have the appropriate services that they need for 911, okay? Plastow has since started their own 24/7 ambulance service. I've also received an email from the new fire chief that has taken over in the town of Atkinson, and they are looking to do the same thing. It is imperative that this town, as Dan pointed out, and Matt, we are looking, and we have to keep improving what we're doing with this town and moving forward. Because if we don't, we're falling behind it, and we're going to pay a severe price. So what happens is, like I said, the ambulance service, Trinity, if Atkinson does what they're talking about, Hampstead has already done it themselves. After this year is up on this contract, Trinity will not negotiate another contract with less than the 5 towns that have already negotiated the contract. And if they even did, the amount of money that they would want would be insurmountable. It would be, we're talking over $500,000 towards $1 million that this town would have to come up to support that ambulance service. When we, as far as a town, could do in-house for far less money. The Board of Selectmen has already seen this coming. We've already started working towards it. We've purchased a new ambulance. We've just put a new motor in the ambulance that we have so that we would have 2 functioning ambulances. In talking with Deputy Chief Kane, he has the know it and the whereabouts, and Jim has addressed it, that we have the privilege of the amount of people that are now available to this town to be able to do this work for us. And if we were to be able to get this set in place before all these other towns do and get these people employed, it would be a lot harder for these other towns to take them away from us, and we would be able to do this service. But the time is now. We have to implement this, and we have to go forward and get this service going. Now, we talk about an ambulance service, but I will tell you this, like the cell phone tower, this has multiple purposes for the town. It will not only fund a 24/7, 365-day ambulance service, those same people will be qualified to be able to respond to house fires on that same basis, 24/7, 365. Whether it's a severe car accident, whatever it is, whatever 911 call comes in, this town would be able to handle that situation with a timely respondence of time. And we're talking minutes, because minutes mean lives. So we're paying, I believe it's $109,000 for the contract for the 1 year, which is now in the budget. Like I said, transportation from the scene to wherever it is to the hospital or where they have to go is paid from insurance, whether it's Medicare or personal insurance. That would become a source of income. That would help to offset what the town is paying. That money would come in, and that money could be put into the fund to help pay for this service. If we do not move forward with this, this town is going to pay a heavy price. And it's insurmountable to me to where people could put a dollar value on a human life for what little bit that we're looking at to do this. So I implore you and I beg you to look at this and to go over this and to know that this, out of anything that has been proposed this year, is of utmost importance to this town.
Thank you. Other comments?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things to add to that. I want to mention this is fire and rescue, first of all. But also, I just want to clarify to our millions of people in TV land, this is looking for round-the-clock coverage. I want you to understand, for about 255 years, we have provided around-the-clock coverage. We are an on-call department. So I'm wondering, and this is maybe a housekeeping question, should this be amended to say, on the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down, provide in-house around-the-clock fire and ambulance services to the town, and so forth and so on? Because my concern is, if people vote no on this, does that mean on March 13th, we close the fire station because we already have around-the-clock coverage? I just don't want people to look at this the wrong way. So it's something that we should seriously consider.
Why don't you propose that as an amendment?
Okay.
So it would be to add, if I may,
Yes.
just speed up, to add the words in-house between around and thus. It would say provide in-house
House
around the
around.
clock. So we're
Yes.
putting in-house around the clock fire and ambulance service to the town.
I think that's important.
Do we have a second on that? Or Mr. Doggett has a technical?
The word around the clock would be better to say 24/7.
24/7?
Or how about 24 hour?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's try to make a couple text fixes here, kind of collectively. I don't think there's any dispute as to the purpose, other than make it
Okay.
read better. So it would say, maintaining the necessary equipment to provide
In town.
in
In-house.
Town.
In-house,
town
24
or in-house?
hour.
In town.
in town,
Town.
No,
okay.
In-house is a colloquial.
Yeah, I know, in town, 24-hour fire and ambulance services.
Okay.
Okay, are we comfortable with that text?
That makes sense to you? In-house, town run? Okay.
Sounds good to me.
So, yeah, let me just try to read it, see if I have the text right, and thank you, Mr. Dogger, for that suggestion. So it would be in the sentence that starts on the fourth line, so after maintaining the necessary equipment to provide in-town 24-hour fire and ambulance service. Right, that's how it's gonna read, and then keep going the same. So, any discussion, we need, somebody's gotta move that and second it.
Second.
I'm not the guy to move the thing, so.
I think
Trish she
Trish has
moved
Yeah.
somebody seconded.
Yeah.
Discussion on the amendment? Chief?
Morning, I just have one question with the wording in town. Does that mean that if we are called mutual aid to another town, because they're gonna provide us mutual aid, we cannot leave?
No, yeah, all right, good point. Okay.
Wait. This article is to establish a fund.
Yeah.
It is not restricting us to doing anything.
But I would be careful. I would be careful.
That is correct, because again, a lot of people are coming into this morning. Actually, it's afternoon. We've been talking about this for weeks. So to understand, and Trish said this, what has to be understood is there is still a budget for this type of service. What this fund is doing is we're trying to establish a fund to get additional funding to expand that service. If this warrant article fails, which I hope it doesn't, if this fails, the default or the proposed budget, whichever one we have, will still have funding to provide the level of service that we currently have.
But I think, sorry, I'm sort of out of my role as a normal moderator, and I'm looking over at the town attorney now as I'm saying this.
Right.
I think we want to be careful not to put what appears to be restrictions on the purposes of this capital reserve fund. So we're trying to get a phrase which communicates to the voters the purpose, which I think everybody in the room here probably understands, but doesn't accidentally have some connotation which is incorrect. So for instance, we're not trying to limit it geographically. Certainly the funds from this capital reserve fund are just trying to supplement the existing operations of what we see as that activity or department. So perhaps someone who can give us a word fix here, just to make it clean and neat without that issue.
Provide town-operated, 24 hour.
There you go.
That's
there we
why
go, thank you.
brought him.
There you go.
I was gonna say town run.
Well,
Instead
I'll
of
take
in
his
town.
operated because the poor guy's been sitting here all morning listening to this. Mr. Doggett, yes. Okay, quickly, if you're speaking relative to these words.
Well, just if we're correcting other things, it says a capital reserve fund when I believe it needs to be a revolving fund, because a capital reserve fund means that it comes to me as a trustee of the trust funds. I put it in the bank, and every time the selectmen need money from it, I've got to run back and forth. Whereas a
Can we take that issue separately?
revolving fund is covered by the treasurer and goes on a standard manifest.
Mr. Doggett, can I ask you just, that's a more complex question. Can we hold that one aside? Can I ask you just to hold that thought and come back with it? Just a minute, I'm just trying to fix the wording here and let's, I know, but there's probably more to fix.
Okay.
That's a different, more complicated fix. So let's try to keep it simple. We'll do one step at a time because this one, I think we're just trying to fix wording. So the amendment, as we have it, would say replacing around the clock with town-operated 24-hour, and then the fire and ambulance services continue. So that.
I would make that motion.
I'm going to make that motion. Can we
Yeah.
second that? Any discussion?
24/7.
Well, 24-hour.
I think the 24-hour covers it.
Yeah.
All right.
24/7 is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's
Anyone
a
opposed?
convenience store, isn't it?
Okay, so.
Jim, come on.
Now, Mr. Doggett, I just sort of asked you to go on hold. Now you're back. Yeah, how about it?
This building.
And Ms. Goiner might have better wording. I just want to see it to amend it to say revolving fund rather than capital reserve fund, simply because they're two different critters. And I want to make sure the creature stays in the right bivouac.
Makes more sense to
I
me.
think it does.
Okay,
The-
do we want a second on that amendment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
Okay, so the amendment here is to change from, I mean, it has an intent, and will replace the text, to change from a capital reserve fund to a revolving fund. So it might be helpful for somebody to speak to,
Just, it's agency, right, is I think what that means. So I think what Jim is getting at is we will not have to go another step to go to the trustees of the trust fund, since the fire department will be operating, efficiency is key, so they would be able to go through us as, I shouldn't say us, the Board of Selectmen as agents of the revolving fund would be able to, yeah.
Yeah, because Matt's leaving in a month, so it won't be going through us.
I might need the ambulance.
yeah, can we just hang on
It's
for
going to
1
become a
second?
moot point.
Okay, but that's fine, you can come right back, but hang on.
The main difference is capital reserve funds are usually held in certificates of deposit.
Right.
They are not normally accessible.
Right.
Like a bank account.
Right.
They require,
It would
so
be
this makes them
inefficient.
accessible
Yeah.
to the select.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Ms. Gunn,
In the CD anyway.
with regard to this amendment.
Well, Mr. Doggett touched upon something that I was going to recommend for a amendment, mainly because we already have an ambulance revolving fund in the town of Newton. This fund has $36,000 in it currently. The purpose of the fund, according to the Warren article, was such funds may be expended for the purchase of an ambulance and/or for medical equipment and supplies for the fire department. I think it is more efficient to expand that Warren article to include the additional purposes and funding that this is intended. And I do have a rough draft of that amendment, which I cannot make because there is an amendment on the floor.
Got it. So let's hold on to that idea for a second. So the kind of amendment on the floor is to change this one to say revolving fund. So,
Can I just speak to that a little bit?
yeah.
The intent behind this article is this is a game-changing initiative for the town. And the reason we did not put this in the proposed budget was because you would see the proposed budget go like that. We're looking to point this out to people to say, this is changing, and as Bob talked about, highlight it, spotlight it. If this is successful, what happens in a year is what happens in a year. I know what you're saying, but there was talk about that. But I think the intent of the board in presenting it this way was to separate it from anything else, to show this is new, this is a different way of doing business. If we do get revenue, we can talk about where the revenue goes from the insurance companies, but just in speaking for the board, and hopefully everybody agrees, that was the reason why we didn't use that other one.
So where we are now with the amendment open to change capital reserve fund to revolving fund, to replace those words and make the revolving fund. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Mr. Hamel. Okay, come on.
My question is, if we already have a fire and ambulance revolving fund, and we're going to create another fire ambulance revolving fund, is there going to be confusion in the accounting of it?
It's going to be a pain in my butt.
It's designed to reduce confusion by what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, I think, and I'm stealing Jim's words, but the intent is to reduce confusion.
Right.
And the key thing is, whenever we make a motion as a board to use any of these funds, we have to be clear in our motions Because typically, the treasurer might not be at the meeting or the bookkeeper or whatever. We have to be clear in the motions where money is coming from, so when the minutes arrive on their desk, they'll clearly know where to go.
Okay, so we can certainly, and I'm going to leave it up to the voters now to decide what to do. We can certainly amend this one in any way, shape, or form, or you can vote on this one and then take another amendment and consider that one. So, not hearing anything else, we're going to vote on this one. This amendment being, do we want to replace capital reserve fund with revolving fund? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry it. So the new text says, fire and rescue ambulance program, revolving fund, et cetera, in all of the places.
In
Now,
title and body.
everywhere
All
that
right,
it appears
just
in
making
that.
sure.
Yeah, correct. Everywhere that it appears in the article. Ms. Gagne, now we'll just move on.
All right, and I will reiterate, there is already confusion with the emergency management revolving funds. There's the emergency management operations and the emergency management department. Two revolving funds, essentially the same person, funds with slight variations. That one should have been modified so that you would have had one. We are now inviting another one. The town treasurer is already responsible for over 20 different revolving funds. That's a lot of accounts compared to 10 years ago. I propose an amendment to this warrant article to strike out the first part, to see if the town will vote to establish blah, 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 under 35 to be known as the Fund 4, up into the purpose, and replace it with, shall the town modify and expand the purpose of the ambulance services revolving fund to allow funding for. Then it becomes the purpose, so for the purpose of employee wages training, so we are adding these to the additional ones. Employee wages training, we already have purchasing equipment, so you can strike out purchasing, you can leave in purchasing and you can leave in maintaining, because we're purchasing it, it's not specified for maintaining. And the rest of it is good. So that's the only thing I am asking for, is for us to change it from creating a fire and rescue ambulance program revolving fund to modifying and expanding the purpose of this. And then to add at the end, oh, by the way, the other thing I should mention is that existing ambulance service fund already receives 100% of the receipts. So all revenues received for ambulance transports will be deposited into the fund. It's already there. So even with-
I'm just getting confused. You're not proposing that for the amendment, you're just stating as a fact.
I'm
Okay.
just stating that as
Stating
fact.
the fact.
That's already
Yeah, that's
there.
fine, that's fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just so they know, the ambulance transport fund's already going into the ambulance service fund. It's already there. So that is just my recommendation, is to change it from establish a capital reserve to modify and expand the purpose of the existing fund.
Okay, can I
Read it
ask
back
you,
to me, please?
Ms.
Oh.
Gagne, to just, let's try to just get the text.
Yes.
I mean, I think the amendment makes sense. I mean, I understand the concept. Let's just make sure we have the text right. So why don't you try, because I think you're looking at your edited one, why don't you read the first sentence as it would be amended to?
Okay, the first sentence is, shall the town modify and expand the purpose of the ambulance
Slow down.
services- Sorry.
Shall the town modify and expand the purpose?
Of the ambulance services revolving fund
Yep, keep going.
to allow funding, and then you're picking up the for the purpose of
Right.
employee wages.
Town operated is an amendment.
Yeah, and wherever that town operated, because I don't have that as.
Right, so the textually, after the part you just said, allow funding for the purpose of employee wages, training, and I don't think we don't need you're saying, are we going to strike the purchasing and maintaining the necessary equipment?
The purchasing, not, so strike out.
Because purchasing's
and
already in
purchasing,
there.
It's already in there.
So the and purchasing gets dropped.
Yep.
And so it will
And
just
then keep
include
the
training and maintaining the necessary equipment to provide the town
Town-run,
operated 24-hour
town-operated, yes.
fire and ambulance services to the town, and raise and appropriate the sum of $233,720 to be placed in the fund, and to name the Board of Selectmen's agents to expend from such fund.
Correct.
Okay.
That's it.
Right, so now I'm going to, just to make it clear, I think we just read it, but that would be the amended text. And can I just, does everybody have that? I mean, are we comfortable? Do we understand what we're, the change?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't think I need to stand up. You said just ambulance. Did you mean, or just rescue? Did you mean fire and rescue?
Yes.
No, there's no fire in,
That's what I'm worried about.
the fire and rescue was just the name of the fund.
Okay.
We already have a fund called Ambulance Services Fund. Whether it's fire or rescue, doesn't matter. It's
Right.
The fund.
ambulance services.
Okay, so that will affect this because this is fire and rescue.
Correct.
Yes, but,
So we're renaming the other
but it's
fund in
still
another one
fire
article?
and rescue ambulance program. This is
We'd have to rename
the
the other.
ambulance servicing, ambulance revolving fund. So fire and rescue ambulance or ambulance, it's still ambulance.
Nervous about the fire product. I want to use fire product.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, do you need to rename the fund name to
It's
line up, or
competitive
is
with
it
the
good
fire
enough to say
station.
it's the ambulance fund and it covers both?
6 of one, half of the other.
Getting closer to the line of,
That's where I'm going.
subject matter.
I get that.
Yep.
And so I'm still, I can make an argument with the straight face because English is okay, but I would suggest putting fire in there somewhere.
Okay, but let me, and sorry for the pause here. Hang on, Roger. Sorry for the pause here, but we do have statutory requirements that our warrant has to notice people about what the topic is. And the question is, if it's a fire and rescue ambulance program reserve fund, fine, they've been noticed. If I would say, and I think town council would probably agree, that even if you decide to say, we're only really going to be the fire part of that, or we're only going to be the rescue part of that, we're only going to be the ambulance part of that, you're still in that bound, because you noticed the person about was the whole set. And we can always come out with less than we started with.
Now, I will point out.
We're up against the boundary there, though, so we may want to, if it doesn't make any difference, either rename the thing, or if that makes a difference, right?
The other thing
'Cause I don't think there's any substantive, one second, I'm looking at town council. I don't think there's any substantive difference between the name of a fund if we decided, by warrant article, we could rename the fund, right? I think,
It's still the fund for this purpose, so all the voters had noticed today, I think
right, I'm asking a slightly different question. If we had a pre-existing fund, we could rename it as part of this act.
Yes.
The voters can certainly give a new name to a pre-existing fund. So it may well be that we're simply going to, I'm really looking at you, Chris, we're just going to rename the ambulance fund as we expand its capability to now be the fire and rescue ambulance program.
Can we see if this one survives the motion, and then potentially what you're saying we would need to do if it survives?
We could, okay, that's not a bad way, let's tackle it that way, good point. Okay, go ahead. Ms. Gagne, are you
All right,
set
the only thing I was
temporarily?
pointing out was the question is the fact that I'm not taking out the additional purpose, which is to provide town-operated fire and ambulance services. That's still in there.
That's still
Right,
in there.
right, unchanged,
I didn't hear that.
right,
Yes,
unchanged.
that is still in there,
Okay.
unchanged.
Okay, Mr. Hamel, do you have a? Got it, okay. How about a second on that amendment?
Second.
Okay, discussion on the amendment, on the pros and cons?
The only thing I'll add to that is if the real concern here is confusion downstairs, then let's work on that as a board and as officials to limit that confusion and have a process where we can eliminate the confusion. I believe this warrant article is very important for the town. I personally don't want to touch anything in this warrant article right now. This warrant article might only be a one-year warrant article. If it's successful and we can illustrate to the town what we tried to do, then we might get rid of this warrant article next year. The existing fund that has $39,000 or whatever.
36,000, yeah.
36,000. I would even make the argument we might have to take that $36,000 out because it would fog the representation about what we're doing, that we're changing, and how it's been successful. So I'll kind of end there and just to say, if the concern here is clerical confusion, let's institute a process and not change the warrant article.
It's not, the primary goal of this is not because of clerical confusion. The primary goal for this is because we have a fund that already has half of the stated purposes of this new fund.
Right.
Historically, the town will vote to modify existing funds to expand their purpose. We did this with the cable revolving fund. We did this with an emergency management fund. This is what the town does. We expand. We don't keep creating more and more funds that make it harder for the townspeople to know where's all my money going, you know? And there is clerical with it. The board knowing which fund to say funds are coming out of. You got two different ambulance funds, you're gonna be asking for it to come out of the wrong account. For the ones looking to put money in, which of these two ambulance funds am I putting the money in? Because they're both gonna have the same sources of funds. Where does it go? Okay? Having one fund keeps it clean for the people, for the boards, for the departments, for DRA, and yes, for my department.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Mr. Guide.
So having said that, if this gets voted and approved, it's not really, it's going to get a buildup before it takes place, which is in March. And I can pretty much guarantee in March on the warrant is going to be to get rid of that other fund and only have this fund. Get rid of it, take the money out, deposit it in the account, and dissolve the account. We're bordering on changing the intent because our intent was to establish this revolving, whatever we use the word verbiage wrong, but that was the intent, was to establish this new fund. The intent to establish a new fund, not modify an old fund.
The intent is not to establish a fund. The intent is to establish funding for a purpose. That's what the intent is the purpose of the fund. That's what intent is. And the intent is to fund being able to provide ambulance services that is town run. That is the purpose. I am not changing that purpose.
Okay, other comments, questions, discussion regarding the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Nay.
I'm gonna, that's, the nays sound like they carry it, but I think we ought to do a hand count on that one, because it's hard to tell, because they're on both sides of me, and it's hard to tell.
Going forward.
Okay, so, if you're in favor of the amendment, please hold your hand up for a while, and everybody's gonna count. Okay. Get your count. All opposed?
Yes, 11, noes 8.
Okay, so the amendment carries.
So do we have to have another warrant article to move that 39,000?
No.
I think we do, because, no, the intent was not to add, I know what you think the intent is. The intent was to illustrate what this new
What the need is.
program costs us, what revenue we generate from this program, and where that ends up at the end of the year. If there's already $36,000 in there, that's going to skew it. So, but people voted, and here we are. So, I won't be here. So,
Thanks, buddy.
just
Keep reminding
remember,
us that.
36,000 was already in there. So.
Any other comments or discussion on the article as amended? Mr. Hamel.
I would just ask that the board instruct the town administrator to recalculate the tax impact, because I think he's flipped the decimal point.
I'm doing it for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Any other discussion, amendments?
No, it's just an observation. Please know, this is not to create any full-time employees. It's still going to be staffed by the existing staff. They just won't come from home. They'll already be there to jump in the apparatus to save the day. And anything you do to reduce that emphasis runs the risk of this not passing.
Yes.
To his point, they're going to be there 24/7.
Yes,
At the station.
Where are they sleeping?
inside the administrative area.
Is building code effective on that?
We have an opinion from, God, John, we have an opinion from a local fire professional agency, I guess I would call it. Mike, what is it?
My question is that
It's lawful to do
going
that.
to be secured from where the fire trucks are and the ambulances are? Is it going to be air conditioned, the area that they're going to sleep in? Is there beds there already?
No, the intent is to use bunks. And that at another point in time,
Bunks as beds.
they will be in the administrative area. John, maybe you could enlighten.
Chief is
But
behind
does
you.
that meet the building code? I understand the chief is behind me.
Yes.
I want to
Yes,
answer
it does.
Yes, it does.
It will.
It will be
Have
compliant.
in front of us, and the chief will talk about it. We had a restudy, I guess it would be, right? 'Cause we're the same agency that told us there's a few tweaks, and yes, we can do it.
with a few tweaks. What's the tweaks going to cost the taxpayers?
Under $1 million.
Mike,
That's nice.
So, if I,
I'm concerned because ever since this building has been put forth, we have endured more and more costs to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
We were given a title, so much money was going to be spent, and it's gone way over that. Then we had an ambulance. We were going to buy a new ambulance, we wouldn't need the old ambulance. Now we got $27,000, was it not, to put a new engine into the old ambulance, and we're still waiting on the new ambulance to come. I'm just looking at the dollar value. I'm a senior citizen, 78 years old. I work part-time to try and pay my mortgage as it is and my taxes. I can't incur more money out of my taxes.
Understand.
And there are plenty of people, seniors in town, who this is going to impact as well.
the funding to cover any expenses, it's already covered by the 8 Merrimack Road.
Sorry,
The
Joe, I
funding to
can't
cover,
hear you.
the funding to cover any additional renovations or any tweaks that need to be made, there's already funding available in the 8 Merrimack Road Trust Fund account. So don't fear about where the money's coming from. There's money there already to cover anything that needs to be done.
But we're also looking, we need a new town hall. We need the library fixed. You're taking money from here to pay Peter. We have to put a level where we can stop spending so much money on one group and not fund for other groups that need it as well. I understand.
The group you're talking about is a town as a whole. It's not one
I
particular
understand
entity.
that.
It's a town as a whole. It's for all the citizens of the town. It's not just for one group.
I understand what you're saying, but you're going to come back as a board later and ask for money to build a town hall. they're falling apart downstairs as it is right now. Their floor is gone. The building isn't really safe for everybody.
No, we're talking about two separate issues right here.
It's-
We have
that's
not-
kind of
that's
what-
it, that's
We need to get
impacting
back
us.
onto the
That's my
track.
whole point. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Chief?
Good afternoon. Just a clarification, just quick about the fire station. The Board of Selectmen instructed myself and the project manager to contact the same fire protection engineering firm that did the fire station the first time and approved it. All three of us met Wednesday. There's 4 things that have to get done at the fire station that are minor per se. All they gotta do is the strobes that are in all town buildings have to be turned up a little. One of the smoke detectors has to be changed. The doors, the 2 doors, because the station was designed to do this, because it was built for 30 years. The 2 doors have to be changed, and the project managers has to put some sheetrock up.
Yep,
Job's done.
that's it.
There's air conditioning. The building was designed with the intent to do this. In regards to the warrant article, as Bob stated, there were 6 communities, even before my time, that did EMS. I was told AMR was first. The town contracted AMR, paid a fee. When AMR got up and walked out on the town last minute, didn't even finish the contract, Trinity came in to assist the town, all 6 towns. As Bob said, new company came in. It's about the Benjamins, it's about the revenue. Out of the 6, we lost 1. Starting July 1st, as Bob said, Hampstead is going out on their own. By the end of the year, as Bob said, Atkinson. There's a warrant article, I was told, for Sandown. Bright Star Trinity has made it perfectly clear that if any one of the 5 communities leave, they will not stay with the contract.
Yep, yep.
We're not, no one, I'll speak for the board and the TA, no one is trying to scare anyone. The contract ends March 1st of 2025. All 5 towns have been notified by Bright Star Trinity. What's going to happen? The other towns have notified the 5 communities. They're going on their own. They have given all communities a 1 year to figure out what they were going to do. This was discussed in a public meeting, I believe, in July, that if the board felt in the future that the town was going to do EMS, the current ambulance would not be sufficient to take 24-hour coverage. Right. So the board made the decision to purchase a new one. The old one, I was the lucky one to be in it, for those that do not know. When it was backing into Exeter Hospital to transport me, it blew the motor. So I was the lucky one to be in that back of that ambulance. The new ambulance was a year out. The town had no ambulance service, so the board voted to replace the old one. We have multiple calls for 2 medicals at the same time. The Board of Selectmen had the vision and the foresight to look into the future and make sure the town residents were prepared. There's nothing hidden. No one, myself, my deputy, the board, the TA, everything has been upfront. This with EMS has been discussed, for me, personally, for close to 2 years. The towns were notified about a fee and what was going to happen about 2 years ago. So that's why I said I support what the board's decision. The board has followed the fire department. The board and the TA, board members, past and present, have been at these meetings, so there's nothing hidden here. So if this article fails, come March 1st of 2025, everyone knows, there's no surprises. I don't have the staff, and I'll stand up here and tell you I lost 3 to another community. So that's 3 personnel that I don't have in the station during the day because they went next door to another community.
Why?
Money?
Well, one is about $5 more an hour, another's about $3 more an hour,
Just what we got, said.
et cetera. No one is trying to scare no one here. I'm going on my 44th year. This is reality. I've stood up here many times and have said the same thing. My last meeting before I had surgery was in November. I said it. March 1st of 2025, we will not have EMS service by the private ambulance company. The residents are going to rely on a call force. That if you look around the communities around us, the call force is dwindling. It's not like it was 44 years ago. These members have 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. They try living in town, they've moved out of town. So if residents do not mind, as Bob said it earlier, do not mind an 18 to 22 minute response when you're calling 911, then so be it. If not, the department has proven itself since we've staffed that station on how many saves we've had. How we can get to a resident's house between 6 and 8 minutes. And again, how many saves we've had compared to when the crew goes home at 4 p.m. and then you're relying on a call force. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion on the merits of Article 17? Seeing there are none, it will go on the ballot as amended.
Now, I would motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 17.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we're not going to revisit Article 17. On to Article 18. Yes.
One more thing. Would the board like to take another vote as to whether or not they approve that based on the amendments of that article?
No,
Where we have the unanimous
I don't think.
approval?
Do we need to?
Customarily, you do it after the meeting if we need to, you re-vote after, but I don't see a need right now.
How about you want to poll the board?
Fair enough. I don't think they do it. It looks like they're comfortable where they are.
Is everybody still in favor?
Yeah.
Yep, move on.
Okay.
It stays.
Article 18, the cemetery trustees stipend. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,200 for the purpose of providing an annual $400 stipend to each of the 3 cemetery trustees. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund account, majority vote required. If this article passes, these funds will be part of the cemetery operating budget in subsequent years. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact. Mr. Landry.
Bill Landry, Cemetery Trustees. Just to give you a little background, to my knowledge, cemetery trustees in Newton have never received any kind of compensation. The board that's serving now, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Saunders, and myself, have been on the board for 15, 16, and 17 years, respectively. So we're at the point where we're ready to kind of step back. Over the past couple of years, we have approached people, and if you look at the ballot each year, it's the same names. No one stepped up. So what we're hoping is that this might be a little enticement. It's $400 per person per year. It's the same as the trustees of the trust fund receive. So that's basically all we're looking for, because if we step back, nobody takes over.
That's our job.
You folks own it.
Oh, yeah.
So you may want to get out there and help support us to get somebody to step up and support this.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, so, thank you. And thank you, by the way, for long service on, and the other trustees on the, cemetery trustees. It's a lot of work. Any other comments, discussion, questions regarding Article 18? Seeing there are none, Article 18 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to establish a contingency fund pursuant to the provisions of RSA 31:98-A for the current year for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further, to raise and appropriate $40,000 to put in the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. Majority vote is required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote, and this article has no tax impact. Who wants to speak to that?
Jim looks like he has something to say.
Everything's getting thrown in your...
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This statute was passed a number of years ago, and I've used it in a number of communities for one purpose, which is give me an honest budget. And oh, by the way, if something happens, we have this warrant article to fall back on. If we had a snowstorm before 12/31/23, the snow would still be there because he didn't have money to plow. This will give everybody an option. The Board of Selectmen have already indicated that before this money gets expended, they will hold a public hearing to explain why, so that everybody understands. This is, I don't want to call it a cushion, that's not fair. It's for unanticipated events that were not foreseen in the budget process.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussions, comments on Article 19? Seeing there are none, Article 19 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 20, Town Cisterns and Fire Ponds Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Town Cisterns and Fire Ponds Capital Reserve Fund established in 2023. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance, majority vote required. The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. This article has no tax impact. Who would like to take that one?
So, as I stated, I've been the ex officio on the planning board for a couple of years now, plus I was an alternate a year before. And through the planning board, I found out that there was really nothing going on with the town cisterns and the fire ponds, and that nobody was really taking care of them, and they were becoming broken down and not used. So this became an importance to me. This is why last year we brought this warrant up and put some money into it. It's been stated that there are quite a few that need to have work done to them. So we're trying to put more money into the fund because they are not cheap if they need to be replaced and to be worked on. So it's cut and dry. These are of importance if your house is on fire, that the fire trucks can get to the nearest location closest to your house to draw water, to put your fires out. If not, they could possibly have to travel all the way across town to get water, to drive all the way back to your house to put the fire out. So the importance of this is imminent. I mean, it's cut and dry, so.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would add is, I found this out because I grew up in a small town like this, but there are people out there that need to hear this right now. If you're new to town, we don't have fire hydrants. We've never had fire hydrants. Next time you drive around town, look for these cisterns. You know, they're basically red pipes coming out of the ground. We don't have what other cities, larger towns have. So this is the lifeblood of being able to put out fires.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion on Article 20? Seeing there are none, Article 20 will go on the ballot as presented.
Can I just, can we take administratively look at this and who is going to be responsible going forward? So we don't get back to that. Which department?
I believe it would be the fire chief.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we know if it's fire or highway. I just
That's
wanna-
not a good point, Mr. Conley. That's a inside baseball. Yeah, you guys can figure that out. So I'm going to go ahead to Article 21, the Lake Coast
Hold
program.
on.
Could I just go back?
yeah, you wanna do
I think I
reconsideration, go ahead.
missed the last one, but it doesn't. Make the motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 20.
So moved.
Seconded. I fixed it for you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we're not going to go back to 20. Okay, 21, the Lake Host Program, by a petition of voters, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to support a lake host program at the Newton Town Boat Ramp for the 2024 summer season. The Lake Coast program is a collaborative effort between New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, New Hampshire Lakes, and local lake associations. It trains and employs individuals to provide courtesy boat inspections to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive plants, such as milfoil, from one lake to another, thereby protecting public lake uses such as swimming, fishing, and boating. Majority vote required. Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends a yes vote. And this article has an estimated tax impact of about 1/2 cent per thousand. It's a very small amount of money. Less than a penny by a half. So, who'd like to comment on that?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah,
we've seen it before.
Yeah, we've seen it before. I don't think we have anybody from the Lake Coast program, but this is a good thing, especially if you enjoy the lake, and it's been successful, so hopefully people will vote once again to do this.
Thank you. So, any other questions, comments, discussions regarding this? Seeing there are none, Article 21 will go on the ballot as presented. So, that brings us to the end. We do have an opportunity, if there is any issues from the floor on non-binding matters from the voters, or if someone has a particular comment or statement they'd like to make. Mr. O'Mara, you do, and then I think we're going to have our town clerk in a moment.
Robin is going to get, as you know, Matt served 10 years, and he's choosing not to run for re-election. And at the request of the board, we got him a little plaque that's downstairs, not here.
All right, that's fine.
Just to show our appreciation.
That's it, I'm going to stay then.
That's all it took, get 3. Hey, somebody's got to keep track of that 36,000.
Yeah.
I know.
Now, they're going to be calling him at home, right? You're going to be fielding calls from your colleagues.
I'm changing my number on March 13th.
Yeah, we know where you live, though.
You go over to the transfer station, you see this guy that looks kind of like Matt, but it's funny, he's got like a mustache, dark glasses,
Where you live.
a hat pulled low, and you can't really tell if it's him.
I just wanted to be
I
part of the
think it's very
public record.
important.
Look like the caveman.
Matt Burrow's done a huge amount for the town. He's served on the selectmen. I don't want to say this in front of the newer selectmen. They might already know, but it's a tough job, and there's a lot of responsibility involved, and Matt's done it for a huge long time. He's given me a lot of advice on things. He's probably never learned anything from me, I doubt, because he's already...
Oh, I have, believe
He already
me.
has a real good handle on it.
Always do, yeah.
But Matt, you've done a fantastic job. Thanks.
So in grateful recognition for 10 years of dedicated service and commitment to the town of Newton, its residents and the businesses, as a member of our Board of Selectmen, we present this plaque to Mr. Burrow for all his hard work and all his dedication.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much.
Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just, real quick, I leave you in good hands. I said it earlier, this board deserves a lot of credit this year for the work they put in to get here today. So if you're watching this at home, I hope people turn out to vote in favor of everything we've put out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think,
I do. Okay.
Ms. McCullough.
Just so you know, the filing for intentions ended yesterday. We have one opening for supervisor of the checklist. We have one opening for planning board for 3 years. If you know anybody that would seriously like to do this, let them know. They can be written in on the ballot. Please don't write in anybody just for the hell of it. I don't appreciate that. But yeah, we need somebody to step up. We are missing in those 2 categories. Thank you.
Correct. So I would reiterate the same thing. It's important for people to step up in the community for these very important jobs, to take the role. I'm hoping that I'll be able to do what I'm doing for a long time, but I think there's many people that have done many, many years of work, basically for the community. And it's time for some of our younger members in the community to jump on in, like Mr. Guy did. Come on in and help us grow, help do the things you want, help make it the community you want to have. So anyway, thank you very much. This will conclude the... Whoop, Mr. Simone, sorry.
I do have one comment I'd like to say. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the department heads, the commission, board members, administrative staff, the members of the select board, for making, for all their diligence and putting this process forward. I think over the years, I think over this past year, we've seen a lot of transparency and we've seen a lot of culture change in action. And I know that I'm very proud to be associated with these folks and to serve, because I think we've done the town a lot of good this year, and we appreciate everybody's assistance.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other comments from the floor, topics? So, let's get maybe the most fun vote of the day, to basically adjourn until our second session of voting on the 12th at 8 a.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you.